Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome here to the third annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. Getting ready for the full 200 lapper at this 2.5-mile historic speedway, home to the Yard of Bricks. We crown a champion at the checkered flag here today, but all these drivers want to be able to win the Crown Jewel season finale. And what better way to do it and get that momentum into season 4 than to say that you have joined Craig Forsyth as an Indianapolis 500 winner. Forsyth is in the field here today. He's going to be looking to double down on the gold. Had a tremendous 4-wide move last year with 2 to go. Are we in for a finish like that this season? I'm Seth Cole alongside of Matthew Rodriguez, who usually is standing beside me here in the booth, but he will be up here momentarily doing the pace car duties here today in the Indianapolis 500 for the opening laps. Matt, have you got me?
I've got you here.
All right, so you're getting ready to lead these 30 drivers around here to get ready to go green. Can the anticipation be felt down there on the racetrack as it is here in the stands with the fans?
Yeah, I'm thinking everyone's a bit gingerly here at the moment. I think everyone's kind of worried about, hey, let's make this a. It's definitely a little bit of a panic for some of these guys.
These drivers here are going to start out double wide. They will wait for the iRacing pace car to hit pit road, and we'll be seeing Matt Rod come up to the front and pace them for what will be the 3-wide salute for the fans, and then they'll be getting ready to turn them loose. 3-wide start here, and you know, Matt, 200 laps, I think we kind of touched on this back during qualifying last Wednesday night. It's going to really, at least for the first 150 laps for these drivers, be an endurance-type race. It's going to be a little bit of a race of survival until we get to the latter quarter of this race.
That's correct. It's more or less just going to be first of all, it's an endurance race first, and then it's going to be kind of a battle of attrition going later in the race.
You'll notice up on the top left of your screen, 203 laps scheduled. Those extra 3 laps will be for pacing. It will be 200 laps in length. The starting lineup for today's race looks like this. Henry Bennett is going to line up on the pole position. He will have Craig Forsyth, last year's winner here at Indianapolis, to his outside in the middle row, or middle line, I should say, of row 1. And then Eric Peterson will be on the top side of row 1, rolling off from third. Row 2 will look like this. Gail Brooks on the inside, Matt Wagner in the middle, and Charles Teed on the top. Teed, a former winner this season from Iowa. Wagner, a former winner at Auto Club. Cohen Evans will be on the inside of row 3. J.W. Miller in the middle line with Jim Herrick on the top side. Row 4 will find Rick Ravone on the inside. Covey Moore in the middle, and A.J. Hobson up on the top side. In row 5, it'll be Jim Brooks, who finished third here a year ago. Paulo Hernandez will be in the middle line with Anders Arus on the top side. Row 6 finds Krista Nelson on the inside line. Middle line will be Corey Lane, and David Leclerc will be on the top side. Bronson Stafford carrying the FRN colors here tonight. He's going to be on the inside of row 7. James Watson in the middle of row 7, and on the top side will be Alex Coates. Gary Corley will be on the inside of row 8, Charles Johnson in the middle line, and Dave Patton on the top side. In row 9, we've got Eric Schaus, our Pocono winner. He'll be alongside Joe McAdory in the middle and Benjamin Combs on the top side. And in the final row, Jeff Highsong will be on the inside of row 10, Jimmy Drynan in the middle, and Jeff Duncan on the outside line. 3 names that are not in the field here tonight, notable names, are going to include our top 3 in the point standings. The driver that will be taking the championship at the conclusion of today's festivities, Robert Maleska III. Second in points, Alexander Van de Sant. And third in the standings, the outgoing champion, if you will, Nick DeGroot. All 3 of those drivers will not be in the field here today, and it was kind of funny. I talked with a couple of drivers pre-race, and those were 3 of the drivers to watch here today, and they said maybe they're going to have a shot of winning this race now that those 3 are not going to be taking the green flag. So we are going to be moments away from these drivers getting ready to go green flag racing. Last year's race ended under caution. Matt Wagner and Jeff Highsong, up in the top 5 at the time, got together over in turn 1 with 2 laps to go. and Craig Forsyth was able to come around and take the checkered flag. We'll see if somebody's going to be able to take the checkered flag away from him here today, and Matt and I touched on it back during qualifying as well. Not only an opportunity for drivers to be able to cap off the season with a trip to victory lane, but maybe set the tone as well for season 4. We saw how last year Nick DeGroot, when he won the championship, was a 5-time winner. This season, he only went to victory lane 2 times. We saw Robert Maleska III make his season debut back at Auto Club, and he went to victory lane 10 times during the course of this season. Matt, you got him lined up there 3x3 behind you. Going to be getting the 1 to green signal this next time around. Are you starting to see any antsiness behind you there with these guys, or are they kind of having a little bit of a facade that they're kind of waiting for the calm before the storm? Looks like we're having a little bit of radio communications there, but now it's going to be turning them loose in a lap or so. And we are definitely looking forward to this. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in here today, including live on ESTV here this afternoon. Glad that you're welcoming us into your living room as we're getting ready to bring you coverage of the Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. Number of drivers in the field here that we have seen during the course of the season, but there's a number of drivers that we have not seen at all. They're doing a one-off here today. A number of them starting up here inside of the top 10. Cohen Evans, J.W. Miller, Rick Ravon. These are drivers that we saw were very fast in qualifying, but it's an entirely different thing when you're out there for a 3-wide start with 29 other competitors around you. So we will be certainly looking to see who's going to try and make their way up to the front early on, who's going to be comfortable riding at the back. And we definitely saw pit road last season play just as much of a factor into the outcome of the race as the racing on track as itself. So pit road is definitely going to be an Achilles heel for some drivers here today. We'll see how they adapt during the course of this 200-lap race. This is going to be the longest track that we have been to in terms of a speedway, tied with Pocono. Eric Schaus was the winner of that race, and he's going to be starting deep in the field. Eric Schaus did not put down a lap time in qualifying Wednesday night, so subsequently he, along with Joe McAdory, Jeff Hysong, Benjamin Combs, Jimmy Drynan, and Jeffrey Duncan, they'll be starting at the rear of the field. Now, 2 drivers last season led 3/4 of the Indianapolis 500, and both of them are not in the field here today. Nick DeGroot and Alexander Van de Sant. DeGroot led 94 laps, and Van de Sant led 53 laps. A handful of drivers led laps here and there. Craig Forsyth actually only led 4 laps, and those 2 that he led, the most important 2, the final 2, got him to victory lane. Henry Bennett, on point, would have been scheduled to roll off from the middle of row 1, but due to the fact that Maleska III is not in the field, he will be the one to lead us to green. Henry Bennett, of course, the one that puts together the setups that these drivers run week after week during the course of this 3rd season of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. And so we know he's going to have a very fast machine. Can he keep it out in front? We're going to have to wait and find out. All right, folks, it's getting time to be able to turn these drivers loose here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Matthew Rodriguez going to make the left-hand turn down pit road. He'll be joining me up here in the booth momentarily. It's a privilege to be able to call this race for all of you as the field is now in the hands of Henry Bennett. He leads us down in the 3rd annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series. Indianapolis 500 is green. At least the top 5, 6 going to get themselves into single file formation, but they are racing double wide behind them around J.W. Miller. Now he gets single file with Rick Ravon, Jim Herrick and company. Side-by-side battle now is going to be back around the 11th position. That's where you're going to find David Leclerc, Hunter Andrews, Jim Brooks, Now they get themselves settled out as Craig Forsyth powered around Henry Bennett. He led the last lap here 1 year ago. He wants to lead the first lap, but Henry Bennett says no. He'll lead the first lap by half a car length into turn 1. Peterson slotted in third in that 1996 Buddy Lazier livery. A lot of drivers here today running the IR18 as opposed to the DW12 they ran during the course of this entire season. So a lot of them at this historic racetrack out there with historical paint schemes as Forsyth now goes back to the point. Wagner slotted in fourth. Gail Brooks right now in the fifth position as the top two open up a little bit of daylight, about 2.5, 3 car lengths back to Eric Peterson. Bennett back to the inside of Craig Forsyth. Bennett has led the first 2 laps. He has done it by half a car length over Craig Forsyth, been able to make that move out of turn 4. The Forsyth utilizing the run on the back straightaway. Bennett utilizing the draft and the slip shot off of turn 4. Has been able to get Forsyth at the start-finish line the last 2 times.
Notice a lot of hesitation out of these drivers. It doesn't seem like most of them want to go too wide just yet, just trying to conserve their tires, conserve their stuff.
That's going to be something we'll be talking about during the course of the day as well. We talked a lot about it in qualifying Wednesday night, Matt, about the fact that that right front tire heat is going to kick in. These drivers, the longer the run goes on, the car is going to get tight. And Indianapolis doesn't have a whole lot of banking in the corners for these drivers to be able to lean on.
Well, the good news is when the car does get tight, the drivers have in-car controls they can use to kind of modify and make their car a little bit more drivable. They can easily modify the front anti-roll bar, the rear anti-roll bar, and the weight jack and try and make that car turn a lot better.
And we saw that drivers utilized those drivers' aids, if you will, during qualifying, and a couple of drivers actually over-adjusted. We saw a couple of spins and a couple of wrecks during pole day qualifying a couple of days ago. So you got to wonder if they learned anything during those qualifying sessions to make sure that they don't over-adjust here, because the last thing you want to do is have to use the one faster pair granted to you only 10 laps into this race.
You got to remember, you just got to be a little bit conservative. But obviously, if you're starting back in the field, you have to start working your way up at some point. Now, you have to decide whether you want to make that up very quickly by trying to make a mad dash to the front early in the race when everyone's close together, or if you want to try and slowly claw your way up by cautions, maybe pit stops, something different.
We documented last season's Indianapolis 500 how really drivers that started at the front of the field finished up at the front of the field. The Craig Forsyth, who won that event, started from the 4th position. Nick DeGroot, who finished 2nd, started 2nd. And Jim Brooks, who finished 3rd, started 7th. It looks like right now, for at least these guys up here at the front, kind of minding their P's and Q's, staying single file, but it put a lot of emphasis on drivers. Oh, I think we have a driver in trouble. Caution is out. Corey Lane in the 10.
Wreck out of 1. Oh, looks like Drynan just got hit.
Corey Lane in the 10. Joe McAdory in the 4. Benjamin Combs in the 77. Look at how the suspension is killed on that car. The right front tire hanging on by a thread.
It looks like Covey, actually. Covey may have kicked this one off. Just maybe pushed up a little bit in the corner, just got a little bit too much, and made contact with the car outside, which was Anders. And once those two collided, they just kind of made a huge pile. It looks like David Leclerc is also involved.
Anders Arus on pit road. You saw the 15 of Covey Moore trying to limp it back to pit lane. We're going to take a look here at what happened into turn 1. Green car on the top side is a ruse. That car that just snapped loose. The black car on the inside line was Covey Moore. And a short straight here between turns 1 and 2. A lot of speed and a lot of drivers not able to avoid in time.
I see the biggest heartbreak out of this situation has to be Corey Lane. Corey Lane actually slowed down from his entire accident, but actually got hit from behind by, it looks like, someone who just didn't understand what was happening in front of him. Jeffrey Duncan. He just couldn't slow down in time, ran right in the back of Corey Lane. That's one faster pair used almost instantly.
You see him coming to a stop. And, oh yeah, Jeffrey Duncan almost ran into another car there as he darted to the inside, then came back up the track and got Corey Lane in the back.
See, that's the problem.
five, 6 drivers I think we've totaled up there that were involved. Also include David Leclerc. I think you mentioned him.
There's just not enough places to go on this track. So easily, I can understand how he could run into the back of him because he was trying to avoid another car, trying to make sure he didn't hit the car in the bottom lane, but he came right back up the track and noticed him stop in the middle of the track. So it kind of makes sense.
On board with David Leclerc, this gives you an idea at over 200 miles per hour just how little reaction time there is when drivers up ahead of you are going 50 to 60 miles per hour slower. You can just see there a lot of drivers, a lot of impact to their right fronts. I saw about 2 or 3 drivers exiting out of turn 2 with their right front tire facing multiple different directions in a split second.
I mean, that kind of tells you for Leclerc's luck that he's had in this past season where, I mean, listen, if it rains, it pours, and I'm going to tell you, he's gotten involved in more incidents. Not all of them his own doing, but he's just been kind of a magnet for those incidents.
Well, we talked about the fact that these drivers are only given one fast repair here for this 200-lap event, and several drivers may have already had to break out that fast repair. We're only, well, just now past 10 laps in, so, we talk about the first 150 laps being a race of survival. It's even more so for a number of drivers that were collected up in that incident.
And you got to think, I mean, how much does this rattle your nerves early in the race that, hey, in lap 9, you're using your first fast repair and you're looking at the kind of the race ahead and you're saying, oh, I've got 190 laps left. I mean, yikes.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with the fact, too, that you're going to be mired back in traffic again. And we saw right there that incident was around somewhere inside of the top 15, collected up drivers that were running back as far as 20th to 25th. So being back there in traffic is definitely going to have your cat-like reflexes maybe go to an entirely different dimension, because if trouble breaks out ahead of you and you do not get through it, if you've already utilized that fast repair, that is your Indianapolis 500 over with, just like that.
I've got to ask, how much does it change your mentality not knowing that you have that fast repair to lay back on? A lot of these other guys from about the top 18 on, they can really go on attack and not have to worry if they have to use a fast repair, but from that on field on back, everyone has to be at least driving a little bit conservatively.
Yeah, and it has to be conservatively, not scared, because if you drive scared, you're going to make mistakes. So these drivers have to, in a sense, kind of put out of their mind the fact that they've already used the fast repair. They've just got to go out there and maybe kind of run this race now as I'm going to just stay at the back until I absolutely have to start making forward progress. And if we end up getting into long green flag runs, which I'm sure we're going to, they can then utilize something like that when the field starts getting spread out, maybe use pit road to gain track position.
Absolutely, but just almost for a fast repair kind of casualty list, it goes like this: Corey Lane, Jeffrey Duncan, Anders, my apology, Anders Aras, I believe, David Leclerc, Covey Moore, I believe, Benjamin Combs, and Gary Corley all used fast repairs in that last incident. The rest of the field still has one in the bank.
And it looks like we may already have our first retiree out of the race. We'll double check on that. It may just be a connection issue, and he may return back into the server, but right now it is showing us that J.W. Miller, one of the one-off drivers, may have already called it an early afternoon here at Indianapolis.
Isn't it a tale for some of the one-off drivers that, hey, some of them are doing better than others? Henry Bennett has to be one that's doing better than the others at the moment.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Right now, leading this race, you've also got Rick Ravon in 6th, and Polo Hernandez right now in 8th, being followed by Cohen Evans in the 9th position. So a number of our one-off drivers, if you will, doing very well here, at least in the early stages at Indianapolis. We should be getting the one to green, or actually, no, we are going green this time. My apologies. I thought I saw the light still on atop the pace car. And Henry Bennett's going to get us back underway here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Now, Matt, we talked about in the last couple of races this season at Pocono, at Michigan, the fact that the championship was decided, 5-6 weeks ago. No way anybody was going to be able to eat into the points lead that Robert Maleska III had built up. And so it really changed the mentality of drivers heading into those final speedway races of having the aggressiveness to go out there and try and take the checkered flag. I think that would hold true here today as well. It's the last race of the season. Most of the spots in the point standings for season's end have been determined. So now let's just go out there and try and finish out the year with the biggest checkered flag of them all.
Absolutely, and I mean Craig Forsyth really has to have the biggest target on his back here at the moment, as he's looks like he's getting passed by Henry Bennett there on the inside. But Craig Forsyth, obviously, he's going to repeat, and we asked him in qualifying. I mean, how much would it mean to, go back to back, but not only go back to back, but win with this kind of a elevated competition.
And it sounded like when we talked with him Wednesday night as well that he was coming into this race with a lot of confidence. He said that, he had a struggling year, up and down season, good runs here and there, number of DNFs here and there, but he felt that Indianapolis, that he could possibly be able to replicate what he did 1 year ago. And I'm trying to remember back. I think that last year when he made that 4-wide move, it was the only time that entire race that drivers had the guts, had the daring to make it 4 wide on the front straightaway, and it ends up turning out to be the race-winning move.
Absolutely, and just kind of looking here, I've kind of noticed who's really been on the move has to be Charles M. Johnson. He ended up starting back, and it looks like my apologies, I actually don't have the starting position here on my screen. It looks like he started 22nd, moved his way up 11 positions, currently in a...
Trying to knock on the door of the top 10. That'd be Jim Herrick in the 57, just up ahead of him. The driver that's actually been working his way up through the field has been the 61 of Bronson Stafford. He's now up to the 14th position, about to take that spot away from James Watson in the 39. So we're starting to see some drivers moving up as well. About Eric Schaus, our Pocono winner. We know he's good at the long speedways. Ended up taking the victory, another 2.5-mile track a couple of weeks ago, and he's been able to work his way up. Started this race from the 25th position, now up to 17th. And it looks like it is official. J.W. Miller is going to be the first driver out of this race, as he will be finishing 29th. Officially here today. So a tough break there for him, as 28 drivers are out there still running, 23 of them right now on the lead lap. Joe McAdory, the last of those drivers that had extended stays on pit road to get damage repaired, had to limp back to pit road after our first and only caution up to this point, include Anders Arus, David Leclerc, Covey Moore, and Jeffrey Duncan. Corey Lane is 2 laps down in the 28th position. Look at Rick Ravon. He has now reeled in the top 2. He's going to pass the both of them before they even get into turn 1. A power move from him, 3rd to 1st in the matter of a corner.
We haven't seen that much issues of inside the top 10, but I've seen issues throughout the field of some of these guys not wanting to pass them.
Eric Peterson and Polo Hernandez now in 4th and 5th, closing their way up onto the top 3. You got Charles Teed there as well. We've only had 2 winners this season that have gone to victory lane more than once. Both of them are not in the field here today. Robert Maleska III, 10 wins on the season. Nick DeGroot, 2 wins on the season. But you got a lot of former winners here from this year that are in the field. The highest of them, Charles Teed, our winner from Iowa. Matt Wagner running 8th, our winner from Auto Club. And then you got a couple of others back there in Eric Schaus, 16th place, as mentioned, our Pocono winner.
It almost seems like everyone's playing a game of Snake throughout the field, just trying to get a little bit of a draft to make a move. But halfway through here has to be Polo Hernandez. He is just flying here as of recent.
Now up inside of the top 5, running in the draft of Eric Peterson. Behind him, Charles Teed, Cohen Evans trying to work their way up there. And look at Hernandez using the outside line to get around Eric Peterson for that 4th position. Now, I'm not necessarily certain that that was more so utilizing the draft more than the fact of Eric Peterson realizing, hey, you look like you're fast, you want to go to the front, I'm comfortable where I'm at, go on by me.
Absolutely, and I've kind of noticed from about, I'd say 13th to 14th, there is about a 3-4 second gap between the field. Not exactly sure what happened here. Maybe a stack up on start?
Yeah, could very well be. We saw this last year as well, where about the top 7 or 8 drivers on restarts would get away and open up a gap. As you pointed out, right now it's 13th back to 14th where this gap is. And right now they're battling for that 14th spot. Alec Coates to the inside of Bronson Stafford. Eric Schaus right there as well, third in this line. The driver that's the caboose on the front running train would be Jim Brooks in the 51 machine, looking ahead to AJ Hobson.
Looking back to the field here, there's kind of 2x2 battles here and there, but really for the top 10, I've noticed they'll kind of pick a lap or two. They all want to battle side by side, but after that, everyone stays about single file for the next 5 laps and does it all over again.
Bright yellow machine is James Watson. He was side by side for a moment there with David Patton in the 38. Harry Corley back there. There's another driver making a move. I believe that is... Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Top lane is blocked, and several drivers are going to slide in. I think it might have been Jimmy Drynan. That was the car facing the wrong way. Correction. Charles Teed was the driver that was wrecked over there in turn 1, and he was up inside of the top 10, so this was another incident up towards the front.
Oh, no. I think I know what happened. And it really looks like kind of a miscalculation almost. I think he may have gotten a little bit of assistance, actually, now that I look at it a little bit closer. But man,
Jeffrey
he had no
Duncan,
chance to catch that.
Jeffrey Duncan, Anders Arus, they were involved in this one. And I believe Jimmy Drynan did get a piece. Either that or he brought his speed way down to avoid the incident.
Ay. Actually, look, we were really talking about Charles M. Johnson. He was almost kind of a cause of his incident. Looks like he wasn't expecting Teed to slow down that much entering the corner and just kind of drove right in the back of him. And as soon as that car got around for Teed, he could catch it, and yikes.
It was Benjamin Combs was the driver that nailed Charles Teed, and I think it was Jeffrey Duncan. I'm trying to find, Duncan was the car that you saw shoot off to the right side of your screen. I think he hit the steel guardrails there off of turn number 1.
Oh, he did? I just noticed that. Man, Duncan has not had a good race here.
Watch this. Oh my goodness. I mean, that is heavy-duty impact, and it was kind of hard to tell if he might have actually hit some debris there that shot his car off to the left. Gonna go on board here with Benjamin Combs in the 77, see what he saw. He comes out of turn 1, and all of a sudden, there's the 5 machine facing 90 degrees the wrong way right in front of him.
I'm really wondering why he pulled out, because, I mean, obviously, race control does call out cautions, but I'm just wondering, maybe he didn't think the caution was right there, or maybe the incident was right there, and just trying to give a little bit more room.
Could very well have. It didn't look like there was a whole lot of lifting that went on there for the 77 machine. We're going to take another look here what happened to Charles Teed once more, and there you see the contact between himself and Charles Johnson. Here comes Benjamin Combs.
Would you believe it? I told you, after all that incident, Charles Teed managed to drive back to pit road.
Wow. I guess I have no choice to believe you because I've seen it on my scoring monitor as well, but no, I wouldn't believe you.
Man had one tire dragging on the ground, no front clip, no rear spoiler.
And several of the drivers caught up in that incident were drivers that you listed moments ago that had already utilized their fast repair there, Matt. Looks like Benjamin Combs and Jeffrey Duncan, their days are going to come to an early end. We're not even 20 laps into this race. We just actually crossed the lap 20 threshold. I mean, that's a tough break for drivers that have high hopes coming into a race that has as much prestige as the Indianapolis 500 does, and you can't even make it into the second half of this race.
It's like we mentioned during qualifying. There's so much prep work. There's so much anticipation, so much work that goes into prepping yourself for this. You know, to end at 25, I mean, that hurts.
Certainly does. Well, we had most of our drivers come to pit road. 2 drivers have elected to stay out. We'll wait and see if they're going to stay out for the entirety of this pacing session or if they are going to maybe come to pit road before we go green. Those two cars would be Gary Corley, your current race leader, in the 7, and Jimmy Drynan in the 94. Now, obviously, in a qualifying session that we brought to you Wednesday night, we only had single cars out there, nobody racing each other, so we never really got to talk about tire strategy and, old tires versus new tires. Corley and Dryden are going to be out there on 15-lap older tires than the rest of the competition behind them. What do you think? That going to play a difference in speed, or do you like this call in gaining track position?
Here's the thing. I'm kind of in that group of I want tires whenever I can get tires. And personally, this race does have the potential to go long green flag runs. And honestly, I just want as much fuel as possible. I want as fresh tires as possible so I can go up there and battle. Now, I understand what they did and that, hey, track position, yes, that is key. But I don't know exactly how this is going to work out for them.
One of the talking points at the speedways, especially Auto Club and Michigan, that we talked about, because we were told this by the drivers, is the less fuel load you have, the looser that race car is going to be in the back end. And obviously here, as we mentioned, not a lot of banking to lean on in these corners at Indianapolis. Gary Corley and Jimmy Drynan are more than likely going to feel that loose sensation a lot sooner than the rest of those guys back there that have the full fuel load and extra weight in the back end.
Well, if they do it right, they can adjust the roll bars and the weight backer to try and make the car feel as normal as possible. But the problem is that may trim them out too much and may kind of reduce the amount of speed they have in that car. So I don't know.
Well, we're getting ready to go back green flag racing here. Pace car is going to be making that left-hand turn to pit lane, working our second caution of the day. If you're just joining us, right now we have 21 drivers on the lead lap. It looks like we have a total of 25 that are still on the track running, and 3 drivers have had to call it an early afternoon here at Indianapolis as Gary Corley gets us back underway. Big jump over Jimmy Drynan, and he has a big jump over Rick Ravon, but as we know, at the speedways, the bigger the gap you have, the quicker a driver behind you that catches your slipstream is going to be able to reel you in.
I'm going to tell you, Gale Brooks was sleeping on that restart. Either he was trying to jump it and just missed it completely, or he was not ready. But man, that's a gigantic gap between 12th and 13th.
There you see the gap closed up. What was about 14 car lengths going into turn 1 between Corley and Drynan is now less than 5 into 3 and 4. And Rick Ravon is also there as well. He's got a lap machine, however, between himself and the 94. I believe that's Charles Teed in the 5 car. Right now, first car 1 lap down.
Absolutely. He's trying to get his lap back here and just trying to keep himself in position where he can actively attack. But he's got a bigger uphill battle for the rest of this race.
No doubt. Charles Teed 1 year ago, I believe, did not take part in the Indianapolis 500, so he is making his first start in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indy 500. I actually talked with Eric Peterson pre-race to find out who actually won the inaugural Indianapolis 500. I found out that actually Dark Horse and a number of other leagues culminated together to run an Indianapolis 500 back in 2019, and the winner of that race was Zach Johnson. So they don't necessarily consider that a Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indy 500, so we're going to basically be saying that the inaugural winner was Craig Forsyth last season, and we're going to have our second inaugural winner here today.
I'm going to tell you, I don't think Craig minds that at all. Nope. I think he's going to enjoy that.
And we're going to see if he's going to be willing to share the stage, so to speak, as a former Indianapolis 500 winner here in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series at the end of the day. We'll see if he can go 2 for 2. So far, he's been very consistent up here at the front. Right now, scored in the 5th position and has not dropped outside of the top 5 all day long. Battle for second. Rick Ravon to the top side of Jimmy Drynan, and just a couple car lengths behind race leader Gary Corley.
Why this is the Indy 500, this is the end of Season 3 of Dark Horse IndyCar Series, going into Season 4. So, I guess we can kind of reflect upon the season that we've got currently. One of the guys that really didn't get that much praise for his work this yes, he is outside the top 10 in points, currently P11, but he was hanging in there all season and still kind of a constant threat.
He was also a guy that I considered a sleeper at the road courses. He was up there consistently between the 5th to 7th positions every single time we went to a track that had the left and right hand corners. So yeah, you're right. Definitely kind of one of those under the radar drivers that we maybe didn't give as much TV time too, as we really should have, and right now solidly holding down the 10th position. And the guy ahead of him, I gotta feel, is on a bit of a redemption road here today, that being the 99 of Matt Wagner. I mentioned that last season, Wagner was running up inside of the top 5, very much in the conversation in the closing stages of the Indianapolis 500, got involved in a wreck with Jeff Hysong in a battle at the time for the 4th position. He ended up limping that car across the start-finish line in 12th place, but you can bet he'd love to be able to be back up in the conversation here today, and of course as well have a bit of a bookend season. Won the season opener at Auto Club. What better way than to cap it off with a win in the Indy 500?
I mean, the past 3 races, Wagner has been on a tear. I mean, obviously 8th at Silverstone, 2nd at Pocono, barely just missing out on the victory. He would have had Michigan in the bag, provided that the caution had come out late in the race.
Absolutely. Look at here, as we're going to be going double wide. Henry Bennett going around Craig Forsyth, and now trying to see if he can also get Charles Teed. You've also got that bright yellow 01 of Polo Hernandez. He was on the top side of Cohen Evans, so we're going to be seeing this too. The more that these laps tick away, the more these drivers will find the courage to race double wide, but not a whole lot of room here at Indianapolis. Really only 2 lanes of racing available to these drivers. You go up to that 3rd lane, there's no grip. You're more than likely going to hit the wall off of either 2 or 4. So these drivers still have to kind of be a little bit cautious on the moves that they're making.
I mean, what's really kind of preventing some of these guys from making these aggressive moves early in the race is, again, to really make a pass here. I mean, the bottom lane is king, but if you're on that top side and you're trying to complete the pass, you're really going to have to pinch that guy on the bottom down. And again, this is lap 32 of a 200-lap race. Right now, I don't really know if lap 35 is where you really want to be starting to pinch people down and saying, hey, I'm not going to give you any room. But also, these cars get extremely tight in the draft, and they can be fixed by moving the anti-roll bars and the weight jacker around, but that doesn't solve the inherent issue of some of these guys have their cars set up for draft and set up to be stuck or tucked behind someone. Set of conditions for that car.
Henry Bennett, we saw kind of fade back a little bit there. I think he was trapped, and that's kind of an interesting thing to say on the shorter way around the racetrack, kind of trapped on the inside line there and decided to back off. He allowed Craig Forsyth and Polo Hernandez to pass him, now sliding into the 6th position. I think we can kind of say the strategy worked out for Gary Corley and Jimmy Drynan, still up here in the draft in 2nd and 3rd, so apparently having 15-lap older tires really doesn't hurt you in terms of speed, and you can bet that drivers are taking notice of that, putting that back in their mind for later on in this race, and we could end up seeing some late race shenanigans in terms of strategy because of what we're seeing here in the first 30 laps.
I mean, Rick Ravon is actually someone I really got on my radar here. I mean, we kind of looking at other Indy 500s he's participated in. I mean, man is fast. And he's kind of one of those silent types that he does come up through the field, but I'm kind of interested to see him leading out this race here.
And he is proving how fast his race car is right now. Worked his way from a 3rd place restarting position, now up to the race lead. Had to pass 3 cars to do so, including the lap machine of Charles Teed, who right now still holds first car 1 lap down in 22nd. Covey Moore is the only other car that is -1. He currently runs in 23rd. And we can add another driver to the list that will not reach the conclusion of this Indianapolis 500. Looked really good in qualifying, very fast. But Anders Arus has called it an early race here at Indianapolis. He will finish 28th here today.
I've noticed Charles Teed's kind of given up the fight here at the beginning or at the top of the field. I don't know if he's just trying to conserve his tires. He may have used up his stuff a little bit too much trying to get the lap back.
Right now, slotted 7th car in line there. Or no, I'm sorry. Yep, actually 7th car in line back there. A bit of a gap between him and the 6th place machine of Henry Bennett and the 7th place car of Cohen Evans. Jimmy Drynan moving around a little bit there on the back straightaway as he's now got Polo Hernandez to his back bumper, looking for another spot up inside of the top 5.
Just looking back here through the field, noticing Polo's really loving that high line, almost near the wall. I don't know if he's getting really any aero advantage from it, but definitely he's kind of running where no one else is, and it's working for him.
Yeah, he definitely is. There's no doubt about that. He has made a couple of passes in that second groove, and that's something that we didn't really see a whole lot of last year. It was really the inside line was the preferred lane to make a pass, only later on in the race, when that second groove would get rubbered in, did we start to see it come to life and drivers actually migrate up there. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, when Forsyth made his 4-wide move last season, he actually got the run, got the momentum to make that move using the top side through 3 and 4 the lap previous. So that gives you an idea of just how late it was where that second groove started to actually come into play, but it is definitely working for Hernandez in the early stages of this one.
And Forsyth's making that attack on the bottom, but I kind of see a little bit of risk versus reward using that top side. At least a good run out of it, where if you have someone even below you just push up just a little bit, they can just tag your left rear and send you right around.
Yeah, and we saw that happen in the first caution of the day when we ended up seeing Kobe Moore get loose. I believe it was Anders Arus was the car to his outside, and he was just an innocent victim due to a mistake of a car that was underneath him. So you're right, it definitely is a risk-reward for drivers using that second groove, but Hernandez tried to use it there out of turn 4 to get the outside of Gary Corley, couldn't quite do it at that point in time. Now you're noticing these drivers step out on each other to the inside line. That's something else we're going to have to keep an eye on as we get later on into this race, because right now these drivers are out there just making sure that they keep their stuff in one piece, but they're not going to lift when they've got a huge run down these straightaways going into the corner. But one thing that they're going to be doing here in the early stages is making the move to the inside, letting the driver know, hey, I'm going to be trying to make this pass down into turn 1 or over into turn 3, and they're going to make that move either just before or just at the start-finish line or midway down the back straightaway. That way you don't catch the driver you're passing by surprise, they don't come down into the lane you're in, and the two of you make contact and end up having your cars wrecked into the following corner. I guarantee you we get later on into this race and into the final 10 laps of this race, these drivers are going to utilize the late move into the corner to try and catch their opponent by surprise.
Honestly, I'm kind of looking at the track conditions right now, and realistically, the top side is going to be rubbered in by the end of this race, just looking at how many people are running the outside. So that's going to be really great in the corners to allow the runs. But I'm looking at the track temp here, and track temp honestly looks really great. Very racy.
103 degrees, a little bit of cloud cover. We saw a little bit of cloud cover over in 3 and 4 when you were leading these guys around under pacing. Now, obviously, with the little bit of clouds we have here, if they do cover the sun for a brief moment, it won't be for long, so I don't necessarily think that that's going to play that much of a factor into cooling the track conditions down enough for these drivers to find added grip.
Absolutely, and I'm just kind of, I don't know if grip is more the issue here at the moment, but there's definitely track limits that you don't want to put your tires at. The main part is when you're going down into any of these corners, you've got that white line there. And if you're coming from more of a stock carish background with the NASCAR Cup cars or anything of that variety, you're used to really putting your tires as close to that white plastic piece on the bottom of the track as possible, right below the white line. With the Indy cars, is a different mentality. If you put the tire down there, you'll really start to lose grip, and that's when we'll see the back end really start to come around on some of these cars.
Mention about the drivers that are out of the race at this point in time: Benjamin Combs, Jeffrey Duncan, Anders Arus, and J.W. Miller. Tough break there for Jeffrey Duncan. Back-to-back seasons that he has finished down at the bottom of the finishing results. Last year, out of 24 drivers, he finished 22nd. And this season, out of 29 drivers, he finishes in the 27th position. Also a tough break there for Benjamin Combs. I was kind of looking due to the fact that we didn't have Nick DeGroot, Alex Van de Sant, or our eventual champion, Robert Maleska III, in the field here today, and was kind of looking at some of the drivers to watch outside of our defending winner, Craig Forsyth. And Benjamin Combs was a name that kind of jumped out at me. He was a top 5 finisher here 1 year ago, but will not be reaching the conclusion here today, out of the race in 26th position. Some of the other drivers that finished up there towards the front in the Indy 500 1 year ago that are still out there: Jim Brooks in the 51 finished 3rd here a year ago, and Eric Peterson, who right now is up there solidly running inside the top 10 in that 10th position. He was a 6th place finisher here last year.
So, Seth, I have to ask you, do you think any of these drivers are holding anything back? I mean, they've got 6 engine modes that they could use to really conserve gas. But I'm looking at last season's lap times. At least the fastest lap, at least on track, was a 40.333 and was set by Van de Sant. And right now, the fastest lap on track here at the moment looks to be a 40.5, 40.6. Oh, crash in the back. Actually.
David Leclerc. And I don't know if it was, yeah, it was
Oh.
definitely a crash, but it was off the racing surface apparently, so no caution comes out for that.
Actually, looks like Jimmy Dryden came up the track a little bit, hit Leclerc's nose. Leclerc impacted the wall, and I think it may have taken out his right front tire, and then he just kind of came down the track and had to park it.
I'll have you keep an eye here on the action live. We'll actually jump back here real quickly, see if we can see what happened to the 50 of David Leclerc. Boy, talk about a driver that seems to always be up there in the conversation at the speedways here this season and can never seem to be able to close it out. Yep, there you see, he gets forced up into the wall. Remember, Dryden was on those older tires, so I have to wonder if it got his car tight on entry, and then David Leclerc noses it into the inside wall, and that more than likely is going to be his day done. What a tough break there for a guy that, as I mentioned, always seems to be one of the faster cars when we come to a speedway configuration, and just like that, about 40 laps in, he is done in the Indy 500.
And that hurts. That definitely hurts. Where, listen, you've already used up your fast repair. You've got nothing left, and there's no conceivable chance of you getting out within a reasonable time to actually, not be in these Indy cars. I mean, there is a point where there's just too much damage on these cars. They will not fix it, and I think that's the point that David Leclerc was at.
Leclerc will finish 25th here today. As you saw, Gary Corley coming down pit lane. He was a driver like Jimmy Dryden that stayed out under the last caution, and now he's beginning the cycle of pit stops as Jimmy Dryden in the 94 is headed to pit lane as well. I noticed that Corley a couple of laps ago was really pushing up in the corners. So while you are able to gain track position and maintain it for a time, the longer the run goes on, we definitely are getting to see that those older tires are inhibiting your ability to be able to turn the car going into the turns.
I just saw them kind of use Gary Corley as almost a pick there. That's kind of going to be dangerous when it comes. Again, Corley ended up pitting almost from the lead, right down pit road, and came out right with the leaders. So that's going to be kind of a stack up later in the race.
And this, of course, as well, we know that with the speeds these drivers carry of over 210 miles per hour, topping out around 225, 230, depending on where you are positioned in a draft line. When you come to pit road, doesn't matter if you're the race leader or back in the 20th position, you're more than likely going to lose a lap. Normally, when stock cars come here to Indianapolis, the track is big enough that if you're up inside of the top 5, top 10, you can come down pit road, you can take yourself a 4-tire pit stop, come out, and still be on the lead lap. But those drivers don't reach the speeds that these Indy cars do.
So just kind of looking back through the field here, one guy I've kind of noticed, and again, I'm a little bit biased here, one guy I've kind of noticed started working up his way up through the field has to be Bronson Stafford, the 61, finally broke the top 10 barrier. And Eric Peterson right behind him, he's finally in the top, he's currently in the top 10.
And looking back to Jim Brooks, third place finisher 1 year ago. Eric Schaus in that 72. Slowly, methodically has been working his way up to the front. And, you and I, one thing that we mentioned at the close of the broadcast Wednesday night after the qualifying session was drivers were going to have to approach today's Indianapolis 500 as an endurance race. And as an endurance race, you don't aggressively make moves to get your way up to the front. You have to do it in a very patient and methodical way, and that's what Eric Schaus is doing. Started towards the rear of the field since he did not lay down a qualifying lap during the midway portion of this week, and he's been able to make his way up to 12th place, knocking on the door of a top 10.
I mean, they just got to make sure, because again, it could come down to the late part of the race where it's, hey, lap 180 of 200, and you're feeling that urge of, I gotta go. But no, you still have to kind of keep that patient approach, because again, it technically will get you up there, just maybe not be as fast as you want.
Cohen Evans right now in the 5th position, making his way around Charles Teed, and tried to get around the fresher tires of Gary Corley, another lap car, but was unsuccessful. That was a little close there in turn 1 as Teed pushed up the track a tiny bit close to the left rear tire of the 17.
See, Teed here at the moment is really just kind of a damage control mode of, all right, he knows he's in a bad situation here, but obviously hoping for something to really kind of, or maybe just pit strategy to kind of come play into his hand.
Greg Forsyth under fire. I noticed that Polo Hernandez kept looking on driver's right the last couple of laps, trying to set the 27 up for a pass to get up inside of the podium position. Henry Bennett got around Forsyth a couple of laps ago, and he is now on the back bumper of race leader Rick Ravon.
And I just saw a collision between Forsyth and Hernandez, and that really shows you the dangerous kind of parts of that line, is that Forsyth almost looked like here.
Well, as mentioned, our champion here today is not in the field, but want to give a congratulations to Robert Maleska III on what's been an unbelievable season. 10 trips to victory lane, 14 top 5s, 15 top 10s. Every race that he was in, he finished up inside of the top 10. I think the only race where he did not finish up inside of the top 5 was back at Phoenix, which was really kind of the only chink in his armor here this season. But at the end of the day, he will be crowned the champion. We're waiting to see who's going to be the Season 3 Indy 500 winner. And of course, as well, also congratulations to Twisted Trojan Motorsports. They're going to be wrapping up the team championship here today.
Absolutely. Just actually, the driver down here now.
Rick Ravon from the lead is going to hit pit lane. Another driver is headed for pit road. That is going to be Alex Coates and James Watson on pit lane. So the green flag pit stops for the first time today have begun, 30 laps into this stint.
Well, here's the big question. Obviously, you're trying to push as much as you can on the pit lane, but you got to take a little bit of care because there's a few bumps on the entrance of pit road, a few bumps on the rear of pit road exiting. So, and then also there is that pit speed limit that you have to adhere to. Any of those drivers just really going to push the limits?
I don't really know. I don't think at least early on they will. I guarantee you if we get down towards the end of this race and we get to what we kind of dub the money stop, oh yeah, they're going to push the limits because, again, there's no championship on the line. There's a couple more drivers ducking for pit lane. I believe that was a couple of lap cars, Charles Johnson and Corey Lane. But, yeah, there's no championship on the line. The only thing that's on the line here is a checkered flag and an opportunity to be able to kiss the yard of bricks at race end. So, yeah, force the issue. See if it works out. If it doesn't, at least you can say you gave it 110% in the attempt.
And I just heard that Polo Hernandez is going to be pitting in this time. Now, that brings us into another thing where you want to pit with your group. You want to pit with at least a little bit of cars around you. Because, again, you're going to want that draft a little bit. You're going to want some aid when you're getting off pit lane.
And he has no friends coming to pit road. All by his lonesome is the 0-1 of Polo Hernandez. Now, for those that don't know how super speedway or speedway racing here with these Indy cars works, you're probably wondering, well, why did the race leader come down first of all these drivers? Well, he's the one that's creating the draft for everybody else behind him. He's out there in the clean air creating the slipstream. Thusly, he is using more fuel, so his fuel window would be a little bit shorter than everybody else behind him.
Absolutely. You have to look at the undercut. Cars are very strong, so undercutting could really at least improve your position in this race.
Got a number of drivers coming down this time, including Henry Bennett, Jim Herrick, Bronson Stafford, Eric Peterson, and Jeff Highsong. That's going to turn the race lead over to the defending winner of this event, Craig Forsyth. He'll look back and see a lap machine between himself and Cohen Evans. Matt Wagner also has stayed out. I believe right now we've got 8 drivers that are yet to make their pit stop that are on the lead lap, and you may see, if not all of them, at least a good chunk of them this time around.
I believe the top 3 might be coming in this time.
There's Forsyth, there's Evans, and here
Wagner's
comes...
staying out.
Yep, that's A.J. Hobson coming down pit lane. Gail Brooks, I believe, stayed out, as did Jim Brooks. Eric Schaus is on pit lane, as well as David Patton.
So that really kind of puts the next driver that's on the track as Polo Hernandez. So it's starting to cycle back around where some of these drivers will be able to see if they've gained or lost anything on this pit stop.
Looks like we're going to be able to gauge the fuel window for these guys somewhere between 30 to 34 laps. As Matt Wagner, coming off of turn 4 here, will be completing his 34th circuit. Like he might be having some connection problems there in the 99, and he has not reappeared yet, as now Jim and Gail Brooks will hit pit lane, and this should complete the cycle.
You know, I'm starting to look around here. I've been seeing some of these pit stops be around 10 seconds, which is much, much higher than the league average that we've had. But as far as a different setup here, it's going to be a little bit of extended amount of time on pit lane, which some of these drivers are really going to have to think about and kind of plan their pit stops around.
And Matt Wagner has returned back into the server. We saw he was having those connection issues, but I believe he may have reappeared after crossing the start-finish line, which means that iRacing did not read that lap he completed. It now has him scored 1 lap down in the 22nd position.
Absolutely. I think he also might be serving a black flag. I don't know if iRacing read his entrance on the pit road, so I believe it may have given him a black flag as well.
How's where you're going to start to see the field break apart into little groups. Right here, you're looking at the battle for the lead. What was about 6-7 drivers before the pit stops began is now only 3 drivers. Henry Bennett, Polo Hernandez, and there you see Rick Ravon in the 2 in the 3rd position. They've got over 2 seconds back to a 2-car tandem, if you will, of Craig Forsyth and Cohen Evans, who complete out your top 5.
I'm telling you, a guy who's really kind of subscribed to this slow and steady theory has to be AJ Hobson. He has been just sneaking his way through here the entire race, and he's just managed to get himself up into the 6th position, trying to hunt down 5th.
Hobson only led 1 lap last season in the Indy 500, but he brought it home in the 10th position. And to your point, just being very quiet up here inside the top 10 again today. Talked about the fact that drivers were going to be able to use pit road and green flag pit stops as an opportunity to gain chunks of track position. Well, Eric Schaus, he was 12th when the green flag pit stops began. He's now up battling for the 6th position with Hobson. So that's a driver that utilized pit road as a net gain opportunity. Changed here between Henry Bennett and Polo Hernandez. Rick Ravon seems pretty content to kind of ride in the 3rd position. Then you got the lap machine there of Matt Wagner, and he's actually being the one to help get Craig Forsyth and Cohen Evans possibly up into this battle, which would be a 5-way battle for the race lead. We are now 59 laps into this race. Again, the 3 laps that were added on to the 200 were for the pacing laps here today. So we are running to the conclusion of this race. Lap 203 will be the checkered flag. So right now, 59 laps completed, giving us a total of 141 laps to go. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break as Polo Hernandez shows the way here in the 3rd annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. Green flag pit stops for the first time today have been completed, and we will be back in just a moment. You're not going to miss a thing. We're going to go FRN side by side here at Indy.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engines. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engines. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world.
We welcome you back here to live action in the third annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We are 135 laps away from the conclusion. These drivers have got themselves spaced out quite a bit after we just had our completion of our first round of green flag pit stops. Polo Hernandez leading Rick Ravon, Henry Bennett, Craig Forsyth, and Cohen Evans. Got a group up there of 5 drivers that are on the lead lap, 2 drivers that are off the lead lap, including Matt Wagner and Charles Teed. Then you drop back here, and it's an even bigger group battling for 6th place on back to around the 14th position. AJ Hobson, Bronson Stafford right now trying to figure out who's going to lead that second train. So we've already established here, Matt, that it's about 30 to 34 laps these drivers can make on a tank of fuel, and according to right now, we're already halfway through the next stint.
And that's the thing where I'm kind of looking at this here, and I don't really know if it's an advantage to be the leader. I think that's maybe why Rick Ravon actually kind of dropped back and let Polo Hernandez pass him, since, I mean, realistically, I don't really want to be the leader here and waste my gas. I'd rather just stay in second place and just take all the benefits from it.
Yeah, Rick Ravon right now in that second position was one of the first to pit road. So if he's able to kind of stay in line here, maybe be able to save just a little bit extra fuel here on this run, it might even him out with the rest of the drivers that all came to pit road anywhere from 1 to 3 laps after he did. Now, we saw during the commercial break that Polo Hernandez was having a bit of connection problems on the front straightaway, had to move to driver's left. Everybody gave him the opportunity to be able to get that settled out. He did indeed, and now is back out in front. One driver that did not get that benefit, though, during those green flag pit stops is Matt Wagner. He's up in this lead group. First car 1 lap down, but in the 20th position. So now if you're Matt Wagner, who was up there inside of the top 10 on the lead lap, what is the strategy from here on out? Because there's no guarantee that there's going to be a caution that'll come out between now and the conclusion of this race. If last year's anything to go by, there will be one if we're following the trends. But, I mean, is there a way that you can gain that lap back here in these final 130 laps under green flag conditions?
To be honest, the best thing for you to really do is just keep going, keep driving to the end of the race. Because again, there's no telling if the last 50 laps are going to be caution filled. Where, listen, last 50 laps are caution filled. You can easily get your lap back there, kind of make your way back into the lead lap and start fighting your way up the field. But I think it's a little bit too early to start saying, I'm going to throw in the towel a little bit. I think just keep at it, and you will eventually get your lap back.
Just joining us here, 130 laps left to go at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 24 drivers currently still in this race, 19 of them on the lead lap, and 6 drivers, actually correct shot, it's 5 drivers back in the garage area. They're all chasing the 0-1 of Polo Hernandez, and we talked about the mentality of drivers that have taken every green flag this season. Based on the fact that the championship's already decided, they can go out there and try and see if they can cap off the season with a trip to victory lane. It's the ultimate risk reward here in one of the biggest races of the season. But what about for some of these guys right now, like Hernandez, Rayvon, and Bennett? None of these drivers raced any of the previous races this season, so does their mentality and aggressiveness kind of go up a little bit higher than drivers that ran the full schedule?
I mean, to be honest, it kind of changes here where, listen, some of these guys, they know most people in this room here, and they know how to race around them, they know how they're going to act, so on and so forth, but for some of the other drivers they don't know, that's where you kind of take a little bit of a step back, like, well, I don't know if I want to race him this aggressively. Why? Listen, if I know Bronson Stafford, I know I can run him all the way down the corner, and I have that trust that he's not going to pull up the track and turn me. Where, listen, anyone else in the field, I haven't raced with them, so I just don't know that. I'm not confident enough to run them that hard.
And of course, we've talked about this during the course of the second half of the season, how next year, a lot of tracks that we've been to this season, they're coming back on the schedule. A lot of new tracks are actually going to be added to the schedule, and a lot of drivers, some of them, they'll say, they want to take and finish out the final race with a victory to carry that momentum into the following season. Other drivers say, a win in the season finale would be great, but then I just look towards next season as a clean slate.
I'm just kind of looking here. It looks like the entire field's really gotten split in 3 packs, where it's really that first lead pack, the second pack that's currently headed off by A.J. Hobson, and the third pack looks to be kind of spearheaded by the 14 of Charles Johnson. Oh, it looks like Gary Corley is coming down the pit road.
Yeah, and this would be around the time that he would need to. Of course, he and Jimmy Drynan are completely off sequence from everybody else. And this would have been the 30th lap on his stint. We'll probably see the 94 of Drynan hitting pit lane within the next couple of laps as well. Let's take the opportunity here as these drivers are getting close to beginning their second round of pit stops, about 10 laps away. And let's talk with our in-race reporter here, Bronson Stafford. I know he's got his hands full right now trying to hold off everybody behind him in this second group, but let's see what this race has been like for a driver in the cockpit here today so far.
Go ahead.
Hey, Bronson, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got it?
I got you.
All right, so right now, running in the 7th position, you had to kind of slowly work your way up through the field. Sitting in a good spot here, closing on the next round of green flag pit stops. How's the car feeling? How has the racing been out there from the driver's standpoint of view?
Pretty good, actually. The car feels all right. It's a little touchy in draft, a little bit of plow, but it's not too bad with adjustments and whatnot. Racing's been pretty good. It's been really clean. Guys are, kind of giving spots up and whatnot. Like, it's still early enough, so.
So I've got to... My apologies. I've got to ask, what's been the biggest difficulty that you've really been kind of encountering here thus far with this car?
I don't know. Probably trying to manage the gaps a little bit. If you're too close to someone entering a corner, it just plows so much worse than if you just let off early and let it, kind of just coast through a little bit kind of deal. So it's just kind of figuring out the sweet spot as the tires wear more and more.
I'll play your spotter, Carlo. Clear. Anyway, we know that you guys are closing in on another round of green flag pit stops. Took us 2 early cautions, though, to get into this long green flag run. A lot of torn up machines, a lot of drivers out there that have already utilized their fast repair. Now, if we follow the trend of last year, we had early cautions, long green flag run, and then some late race yellows. Are you planning for that, or at this point in time, are you basically strategizing for a long green flag run all the way to the checkered flag?
I've already worked out pretty much going to the end on the stops and coming like through like putting as far as I can and then running the race to the end. So if there's yellows, obviously it'll put a wrench in things, but as of right now, it's just kind of plan as we go, which is about every 30 to 35 laps, it seems. So.
All right, Bronson. Well, we'll let you get back at it. Thanks for talking to us. Best of luck here for the continuation of this race.
All right, thanks, guys.
One thing I can take away from that, he sounded so calm. He's got drivers around him that are slingshotting around him. He's running at over 200 miles per hour. You have to have the reflexes of a cat, and he sounds like he's out there for a Sunday drive.
I mean, here's the thing. It's kind of, you've got to take yourself out of the moment a little bit. And, here's the thing. If you're thinking about 225 miles an hour, you may not be the happiest person in the world. You're probably going to be a little bit agitated, a little bit kind of short of breath and really focused. I mean, kind of taking yourself out of it, taking that step back, taking deep breaths and staying calm. I mean, that'll let you kind of look at your moves in front of you and say, all right, well, that's not going to work. This probably isn't going to work. How about I just kind of stay in line, stay patient?
All right, what's going on here? Because there's now about a 5 car length gap from Polo Hernandez back to Rick Ravon. I mean, he was up there on the back bumper, and obviously we can assume he was trying to save fuel, but now he's opened up a lot of daylight, backed up to Henry Bennett. Is this just a case of that the 01 isn't saving any fuel and that this 2 car is ultra saving right now? Or is it that the 007 is reeling the 2 car back to him? It's kind of an interesting formation with this lead group.
I think maybe he may have turned his engine down just a little bit, trying to save just a touch more fuel. So I'm kind of confused, but I can see the strategy here, or maybe just Henry Bennett's really fast.
Right now, you've got the top 3 separated by a lap machine. Back to 4th place, Craig Forsyth. And we've talked about the up and down season that Forsyth has had. Right now, finds himself 9th in the point standings coming into this race. 4 top 5s and 9 top 10s. The defending winner of this Indianapolis 500. And right now running better than a number of other drivers ahead of him in the point standings, like Kobe Moore and Matt Wagner. Charles Teed, Wagner and Teed right now trapped a lap down. So we mentioned the fact that championship is decided. There are a couple of battles right now for drivers trying to finish the best they possibly can here in the point standings at season's end, and we'll cover those in just a moment as Polo Hernandez has hit pit lane, so officially the second round of green flag pit stops have begun.
That's going to be the big decider of these pit stops. Again, kind of getting that jump on the others does allow you to get a little bit of an undercut. Just the question is, how strong is the undercut here? And then again, how fast can you get down pit lane and get to your pit stall, get your stop done, and get out faster than everyone else without getting that speeding penalty?
Hernandez is down and away. Here comes Rick Ravon onto pit lane, so he was able to stretch it 1 lap further than the 01 was, but again, has to come down a little bit sooner than everybody else since he was one of the first on pit lane during the first cycle of green flag pit stops. That turns the race lead now over to the 007 of Henry Bennett. Craig Forsyth now slots into second, as we got a couple other drivers that have just hit pit lane as well. Alex Coates and James Watson. I believe that they were on pit road the same lap as Ravon was on the last stint.
Now, Seth, am I seeing this correctly and seeing that Matt Wagner is right up there almost with the leaders?
He is. Both he and Charles T. They are 1 lap down, but they have remained in this lead pack. So if you're Matt Wagner and you see that 007 dive to pit lane, you would love to see a caution, because then you would be able to have yourself scored on the lead lap in front of the eventual leader, Craig Forsyth, when we end up seeing Bennett head for his pit stall. So you talk about staying out there running all the laps. I think that also a key factor is that both Teed and Wagner have themselves in the same zip code as the race leader, so they could try and get up there and maybe race their way back onto the lead lap.
That's one of the great, never say die mentalities. I mean, he is just hanging in there and at least trying to give himself a shot rather than saying, well, my race is done and kind of conceding defeat. So he's still staying in this.
AJ Hobson was just on pit lane a lap ago. Bronson Stafford and Jeff Hysong going to hit pit lane this time from inside of the top 10. There's Hobson in the 63 coming back out onto the racetrack. Race leader is going to go around him, put him a lap down for the moment. Hobson will cycle back around on the lead lap when the remaining 10 drivers all head to pit lane.
Realistically, kind of looking through the field at the moment, the only two drivers that I'm going to tell you, but it really will have an uphill battle, at least trying to get back on the lead lap, has to be Corey Lane and Charles M. Johnson. Those are the only two that I really see having struggles getting back on the lead lap, but everyone else from 22nd all the way to, looks like P15, they all have a chance to get back in the lead lap.
Of course, for Wagner and Teed, they're going to be having to come to pit lane still, so they will probably still be scored a lap down when everything cycles around. Everybody else right now that has scored one lap down your screen, they lost that lap coming to pit lane already in the last 2 or 3 laps, so they will more than likely cycle back on the same lap as the race leader. Is a little bit of a moment there with Cohen Evans trying to slot up in front of another driver, as here comes Henry Bennett to pit lane. He's coming down all by his lonesome. I mean, you mentioned about the fact of, like a super speedway race, wanting to come down pit road with friends, leave with friends, so that way your up to speed laps are going to be a lot faster with 3 or 4 cars than it would be all by your lonesome. But with that being said, you look at drivers that have come to pit lane by their lonesome, but like Rick Ravon, Polo Hernandez, and now Henry Bennett, they've still all come out together.
Easily. And again, you got to have this little bit of coordination. That's why it's so great to kind of have a team here where you guys can coordinate and you can plan this. And honestly, when you plan it, you can make a pack of your own. And if you really kind of blitz them on pit strategy, you can just pull away from the rest of the field when everyone comes down.
David Patton was on pit lane this lap. Jim Herrick in the 57 ducking onto pit road here at the completion of lap 89. Now, I'm kind of working the calculators in my head here, Matt, and this is very interesting because if these drivers can make it a total of about 34 laps max on a fuel run, right now, with 114 laps to go, I've got these guys anywhere from 9 to 11 laps short of making it if they make pit stops for the next 2 times under green flag conditions. So pit strategy could be very interesting because I don't think you can save 11 laps in an Indy car.
Absolutely. So we got Forsyth, Evans, and Teed on pit road this time. Looks like Schaus and Moore will be following them in.
Going to turn the race lead over to Gale Brooks. Jim Brooks staying out as well. These two stayed out the longest under the first round of green flag pit stops also. It's like Matt Wagner in the 99. We're still waiting on him to make his pit stop. That'll be in the next lap or so. Right now, he is scored in 10th place and on the lead lap, but he will be losing that lap again when he comes down pit lane. See if Gale Brooks and Jim Brooks stay out an extra lap. They could if they wanted to, and they will. They can go one more lap before they will have to come down to the attention of their crew.
To be honest, if I was anyone who just got my lap back from kind of the race, I'd personally want to stay out as long as possible, run it empty, just so I can have that chance of, if there's a caution that's going to come out, at least I don't pit one lap early and a caution comes out that next lap and I regret my decision.
Absolutely. Talked about the fact that there are drivers that are battling for positions, close proximity battles for position to finish out the year. The highest right now would end up being for second place. 8 points separated Van de Sant and Nick de Groot, but neither one are in the field, so looks like Maleska the third would have the championship, Van de Sant second, and Nick de Groot in third. So of the drivers that are out there on the track right now, it would be Charles Teed and Matt Wagner, the two guys that are one lap down. They came into this race in a battle for 5th place, separated by 2 points. 8th place points battle is underway with Gale Brooks 5 points in hand over Craig Forsyth. And then you've also got Jim Herrick trying to point his way into the top 10 for season's end. He came in 5 points behind Victor Santos, who is not in the field here tonight.
Really just kind of looking through the field here. There's some different strategies I noticed going on, and I'm really kind of wondering if I'll aid them later in the race with just kind of making their number, or are they going to barely make it, or are they going to have excess fuel?
Here comes Gale Brooks onto pit road. This will complete the cycle of green flag pit stops. We saw Jim Brooks on pit lane the lap before. Race lead's going to turn back over to Polo Hernandez, or will it? Henry Bennett making a charge on the top side, couldn't quite get there, and it looks like what was, 5 or 6 drivers up in the lead group that were on the lead lap, it's now been whittled down to 4, with Hernandez, Bennett, Forsyth, and Rayvon.
Now we can kind of settle back into this long run, and we saw how much this field has gotten spread out here. Looks like the third pack really kind of got broken up there, but I think they're going to reform with Gale Brooks here in a second.
That's Cohen Evans just back there in the draft of Charles Teed, so maybe 5 drivers up here in this lead group when all is said and done. And then it's going to be a full 5.5, now 5.8 seconds back to Jeff Hysong, who leads AJ Hobson, Bronson Stafford, Eric Schaus, and Gale Brooks inside of that top 10. A couple of other drivers have latched onto this group as well. Jim Brooks in 11th, Eric Peterson in 12th, and Jim Herrick in 13th position.
I've noticed back here on both pit stops, Jeff Hysong has had unusually long box times. Not exactly sure if he's getting damage repaired, but he has always had pretty much long stops in the majority of the field.
And that last time around, he nearly had a 10-second pit stop. He has remained up inside of the top 10 pretty much all day long, and of course, much like Matt Wagner looking for some redemption from last season, Hysong was up inside of the top 10 in the final 5 laps of the race, and it was he and Wagner that got together in the closing stages that brought out the race-ending yellow. How about Craig Forsyth up here in this 3rd position? We keep talking about the fact he's the defending winner of this race, but you know, the old adage, in order to finish first, you must at least first finish. That car has not fallen outside of the top 5 all day long, although he hasn't really been out in front leading this race. And this kind of almost looks like the identical playbook that he had last season, where he wouldn't go out and dominate out in clean air. He only led 7 laps in last year's race. So, if there's a driver that comes into this race with past history of knowing exactly what to do, being in the right place at the right time, it would be this 27 car, and he seems to be doing exactly what he needs to do here again today.
Well, you got to think Forsyth is kind of licking his lips here. There is a $150 prize for anyone to win the Indy 500, and he definitely has that kind of circled on his calendar here, saying, I can get a nice little paycheck here.
Absolutely. That's a little bit of added incentive for these drivers, which I think will certainly play. Jimmy Drinan in the 94. Think that might be off of turn 2. That car's going to come to a rest down in that lower groove, and he was on the lead lap running around the 13th position.
I believe there's a bit of contact with Charles Johnson there that kind of caused that one. I think I don't know. I almost want to say that it looks like he kind of turned in on Charles to the wall, and it kind of caused that one, but I don't know.
Let's take a look at it here. That was indeed over in turn 2 where his car came to rest. The contact is here in the middle of 1 and 2. That's a tough one, isn't it? Kind of an argument over space between the 94 and the 14.
It's definitely a weird one.
Take a look and see if we can get another camera angle here. And from first glance, it looks like the 94 kind of runs the 14 out of room. You do have to kind of counter steer the car off of turn 1 onto that little short stretch between turns 1 and 2. Let's see here. Does he push up? No. Well, kind of hard to tell there if one came up or if one came down. Well, one thing we do know, it brings out this caution, it bunches everybody back up, and we are now getting ready to enter into the second half of this race as well. So business is going to start to pick up here very quickly.
Let me ask you here. I mean, how kind of angry do you think Matt Wagner, Charles Teed, Covey Moore, those guys are? Because again, there is wave arounds in this race, but everyone effectively just pitted.
Well, maybe not as upset as you would think, because we do have a number of our race leaders coming down pit road. I don't know. I'm going to look and see here. Henry Bennett staying out. Nope. I was wondering
Actually,
if Wagner...
It looks like Wagner just got waved around the pace car.
He got the wave around. Yes. I was wondering where he was in position to the race leaders, and I think he was ahead of Henry Bennett, but behind Polo Hernandez. So with Hernandez pitting, that allows the 99 to be able to take the wave around, because the only car between him and the tail end of the lead lap would have been the pace car. And now I'm going to have to start doing the calculations all over again, because I don't know how many laps into that run we were. I don't know if we were that 9 to 11 laps into that run that these drivers would have needed to be able to make it the rest of the way on 2 more pit stops.
And that's the big question, is you got to look at it here and saying, hey, this kind of just throws all your pit calculations out the window. So now you got to rerun all your numbers, try to figure out, hey, can I make it to the end of the race on this? Well, what do I need to do? How many laps do I need to save? But can I throw it in mode 6, hope for the best?
Looks like 7 drivers did not come to pit lane. Henry Bennett, Cohen Evans, AJ Hobson, Bronson Stafford, Eric Schaus, Eric Peterson, and Jim Herrick. Greg Forsyth, who was amongst those that came to pit road, was the first one off pit lane. He'll restart in 8th with Polo Hernandez and Jeff Heisung completing the top 10, with Matt Wagner back on the lead lap. We're going to have a total of 18 drivers on the same lap as leader Henry Bennett, 23 still running, as Charles Johnson has taken his car back to the garage area, joining David Leclerc, Benjamin Combs, Jeffrey Duncan, Anders Arus, and J.W. Miller. Lights out atop the pace car, as Henry Bennett will be getting ready to get us back under the green flag. We already saw earlier on in this race drivers stay out under a caution period with 15-lap-old tires and still be able to maintain their track position, although they did seem to deal with a tighter condition into the corners a lot sooner than the fresher tires around them. Henry Bennett will be restarting this race with 11-lap-old tires, 9-lap-old tires for Cohen Evans, AJ Hobson with 14-lap older tires, 13 for Bronson Stafford, and 10 for Eric Schaus, as I believe we had one of our drivers that stayed out hit pit lane. Nope, all 7 are still out there. Back to Jim Herrick. So this will make this a very interesting restart, just based on the fact that if we have right now drivers like Evans that are out there on 9-lap older tires and drivers like Hobson that are out there on 14-lap older tires, I think that means that those 9 to 11 laps these drivers were lacking, that everybody that came to pit road is looking at this race going green to the finish.
And that's the big question here, where can you make it to the finish on this? Absolutely not. You're too far away. But can you put yourself in a good situation where maybe just taking one stop here to the end of the race could be a viable option?
We'll have to wait and see. Of course, if we follow the trends of last season, we had a long green flag run in the middle of that Indianapolis 500, and then a caution came out, and we saw many more yellow flags up towards the conclusion of the race. Will we see the same thing here this season? Bennett gets us back under the green flag. We mentioned Charles Johnson out of the race. The other driver involved in that incident, Jimmy Drynan, is back on track, but 2 laps down in the 22nd position.
And really just kind of a generally good start.
Everybody pretty spaced out. Won't take them long to be able to bunch back up. And a car making the move to the inside is Charles Teed in the 5. He's now going to, at least for the time being, have himself scored on the lead lap. And he'd love to see a caution flag come out sooner rather than later. You got to wonder if maybe that's a little bit of strategy worked out there between himself and the 007, because Teed, he gets the track position, gets back on the lead lap in terms of scoring. Bennett, he's got someone to ride behind to be able to save some fuel and draft.
We got to cross your fingers. I know Teed's kind of jumping up and down like, hey, someone want to put it in the wall for me? Someone want to spin out? Because, again, this is really his chance to get right back on the lead lap and get himself right back there fighting. But I can imagine a lot of those guys behind him, here's the thing, Teed was fast. I wouldn't want to see him back in the lead lap if I was a competitor.
Absolutely. AJ Hobson going to duck to the inside of Cohen Evans. He'll slide up into second place now. Evans looks back and sees Bronson Stafford and Eric Schaus in 4th and 5th position. Of the drivers that came to pit lane, Craig Forsyth, the highest running in 8th place, still riding in the 8th position. You'll have to wait and see just how long those drivers are going to wait to take advantage of the fresh Firestones underneath them.
Well, you can't use it all up too early because, again, you can make it about 30, 40, 50 laps on this stint if you really schedule it out right. So you can get yourself into a really good situation, but you don't want to burn up your tires all in the first 10 laps.
This next time around, we will have crossed the threshold of halfway here in the Indianapolis 500, presented by HyperX. AJ Hobson looks like he's going to be the one to come around and lead that halfway marker, as Henry Bennett will cross in 2nd, Cohen Evans in 3rd, Bronson Stafford and Eric Schaus will be your top 5. Looks like we may be starting to settle into another long green flag run here, as no side-by-side battles really all the way back to the top 10, even the top 15. Right now, we've got a total of 19 drivers on the lead lap, including Charles Teed, who is not leading this race, but he is the car out in front.
And again, Teed's going to have to be a little bit bittersweet about this because, again, lap down, not too great. But at least he's in a well enough situation where he can make a grand charge if a caution comes out and things fall right for him.
Now, according to the calculations, of course, pace laps included, Charles Teed's going to need that caution flag to come out somewhere in the next 16 to 18 laps, because that's when he would have to come to pit road. He stayed out under this caution, so he has about 14 laps on his tires, and he will be having to come to pit road sooner than a number of the drivers back in the latter half of the top 10. The guys that are around him, though, like AJ Hobson, Henry Bennett, Cohen Evans, they'll be having to come to pit road around the same time that Teed will.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of looking here. And Matt Wagner, at least ever since he got his lap back, he has not really been tearing through the field a little bit. But surely kind of guys to work his way up, but I wouldn't expect anything instantly.
No, absolutely not. Matt Wagner, of course, if you're just joining us, lost a lap under green flag pit stops when he blinked out of the server, returned back, but after crossing the start-finish line, so he did not score his lap. He did get the wave around under this most recent caution, so back in lead lap in the 16th position, and just riding, as you pointed out there, Matt, for the time being. Up at the front, though, how about AJ Hobson at 63? Because I mentioned, in fact, he finished top 10 here 1 year ago, but at the same time as well, at the Speedway races this season, he's been on a bit of a momentum streak. Had a nice top 5 run back at, I believe it was Michigan. He had a solid outing as well at Pocono, looked very strong there, so very good at the Speedways. And what do you think? Maybe, pun intended, a dark horse driver to watch here today?
Easily so, but I just actually realized the interesting fact here. Jim Herrick actually has used the faster pair, so he is all out for the rest of the race.
Wow.
I don't know if he forgot to turn it off during a pit stop or something, or
maybe went up and brushed the wall during one of these green flag runs, but yeah, that's something that we will have to keep in our back of our minds for later on in this race. Herrick right now up in the 7th position, been having a very solid outing, up inside of the top 15 all day long, kind of hovering between 9th to 12th most of this race and running the highest he has all day long, currently just in front of Craig Forsyth, P7 right now for the 57.
Absolutely, and I'm kind of looking through the field here. I'm seeing Forsyth. Forsyth's kind of laying low here at the moment. I'd say at least a dark horse that I'm seeing back in the field here at the moment has to be, and surprisingly, I can't believe I'm kind of saying this, has to be Covey Moore. I'm a little bit shocked of. He is a lap down, but he's one of those guys that I've kind of noticed comes to life later in the race and tries to sneak up. I think if he gets his lap back, he can really start to make some moves on these guys.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is a driver that has already utilized his fast repair, of course, bringing out the caution in the first 10 laps of this race, the first yellow flag of the day.
That's correct.
We'll see if he's going to be able to tiptoe his way through the field if he does get that lap back. Yeah, he's another guy that's jumping up and down right now, because if Charles Teed is able to have a caution come out and be scored on the lead lap, then Kobe Moore would be the driver in line to get the free pass.
And again, that's why he's really jumping up and down saying, hey, listen, if a caution's going to come out, this really aids him because, again, both of them are on the same team, so this is an easy way to kill one bird, or sorry, two birds with one stone. My apologies.
You can kill one bird with two stones as well. It'd be a pretty tough bird, though.
A beefy pigeon.
94 laps remaining. We're now into the second half of the Indianapolis 500. A.J. Hobson leads the way, and these drivers are right on the horizon of having to make what would be the third round of green flag pit stops here today. For the top 7, it'll be sooner rather than for the other drivers from 8th place on back who were on pit road under our last caution. But we're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. Then we'll be back to cover those pit stops here at Indianapolis as we are getting closer.
Right on the front stretch.
Never mind, we'll stick it here as Alex Coate has had a problem. Joe McAdory also, I believe, getting a piece of it, as well as the lap machine of Jimmy Drynan.
Looks like Joe McAdory also may have caught a little piece of that as well.
Yellow flag gonna fly for the 4th time today. Also, Gary Corley in the 7, who was way off pit sequence with most of the field most of the day. He is going to have to teleport that car back to pit road. Could not make it back of its own volition. Same for the 37 of Alex Coates. Let's go back and see what happened. This was on the front straightaway.
I'm looking at that. What were they doing? They were playing bumper cars halfway down the front straightaway.
There it was out of turn 4. This would have been around the 15th position. Got the 2 making a move there 3 wide, and there is the contact between Corley and Coates, and Drynan goes as low as he possibly can, but that pit wall there separating pit lane from the racetrack not allow him to go any lower, and he gets collected up as well.
Yeah, they were really just kind of bouncing off each other, and I guess that would be okay if it was just them, but when they wrecked, they really kind of stopped up that top line, and everyone was behind him, just caught everyone in that.
Actually, believe... I was going to correct myself. I thought it actually was the 4 of McAdory that was making that 3-wide move, but it was Rick Ravon in the 2 machine. We're going to take another look here at the contact that was made, and yeah, a lot of places that you expect to see wrecks at Indianapolis are usually in the entrance of the corners, not necessarily on the straightaways, and there it was again. It almost kind of looked like, at least at the initial contact, was Coates saw that Ravon was down there. He was moving up to give room. I don't know if the follow-up contact was Corley trying to recover his race car after the initial contact or not.
I don't know, but I could see it trying to recover the race car, but that was kind of a sharp turn. Maybe it just may have been a little bit of overreaction, thought the car was going to maybe slide out a little bit more than he did, tried to jerk it back, and unfortunately, these things really turn and they really hook. I just noticed Kobe Moore just got waved by the pace car.
Kobe Moore, yeah, that caution's going to get him the lucky dog and put Charles Teed back in the lead lap as well. And as we saw right there on board with Gary Corley, he had that car counter steering, and it might have been a case of that the car got so upset initial contact due to the in-car adjustments these drivers are able to make during the race.
Absolutely, and again, if you start modifying the front part of the car, you have to start modifying the back bar, and you have to modify the weight jacker. So one little adjustment, it will set off a chain reaction throughout the car where you have to adjust to compensate it.
So we are now at 90 laps to go. We're going to get the green flag with less than 90 laps remaining, which means that now all of these drivers can make it to the checkered flag on just 2 more pit stops. The question is, when do they make those pit stops here? Because we've seen drivers stretch the fuel as far as possible. We've seen drivers kind of jump the cushion and try and short pit. So interesting here down this home stretch, if we do it under green flag conditions, when these drivers have it mapped out, of making those particular 2 trips to pit lane. Let's see if we can get a little bit of an idea of strategy that could be formulating. Let's talk with our in-race reporter, Bronson Stafford, once again. Hey, Bronson, it's up here in the FRM booth. You got us again?
Yep.
All right, so this caution, actually these last 2 cautions, kind of making things interesting. That we were looking like you guys are going to be about 10 laps short on fuel after the last 2 pit stops, but now it's kind of puts you in the fuel window to make it the rest of the way with 2 more trips to pit lane. So are you expecting that this is go time for drivers, or did we still kind of settle into a bit of a run here until we get to that final pit stop?
It's hard to say. I know up front it's been kind of crazy, but I don't know. I really do think if you're smart, you wait till after the last pit stop, just, everything's sorted out and go from there. But you never know. There's so much that can be gained or lost here with quick cautions, and who knows, we might even just stay cautions to the end. You never know. So track position is really important. The car definitely drives better the closer up front you get, though. So I expect some people to be trying to push pretty hard.
Well, I guess, Bronson, you did answer part of my question there, which is, do you really expect there to be many more cautions here, or maybe just 1 or 2?
I don't know. Honestly, I really don't know. It's been such a, it's been such a clean race. We had the quick 2 incidents to start, and then we've had back-to-back quick instances here, and so it's hard to say. I think that one was just like a 3 wide that people probably shouldn't have been doing halfway in, but besides that, it's really tough to say.
You're going to be restarting in the 5th position here, Bronson, and we've seen on the last couple of restarts, especially restart number 2 and restart number 4, where the front group will kind of break away, and then there's a second group. So what do you have to do as a driver here to make sure that you hit the exact acceleration point of the race leader to be able to stay up here with this lead group?
Yeah, honestly, I'm just watching the car ahead for movement. If they go, I'm going kind of deal, and we'll go from there, but it seems like the top 10's been able to break away every time, so we're hoping maybe that's the case again.
All right, Bronson, well, you're doing a great job out there in that FRN machine. Pace car is pulling off, so we're going to let you get back at it. Good luck.
Thanks, Seth.
Here we go. Henry Bennett going to lead us back to the green flag. Less than 90 laps to go here. Officially 89 as Bennett hits the start-finish line. This is going to be interesting. Bronson's not sure if it's go time. We're not sure if it's go time, but I think we're going to find out very quickly.
I mean, look at Eric Schaus. He jumped all the way from 14th to 4th on that pit road stop.
He has undoubtedly been the pit road king, if we can crown him that here today. He has gained, I think by my calculations, 13 spots on pit road during the course of the pit stops he's made here today, whether they be under green or under caution.
I'm going to tell you, Matt Wagner had a little bit of internet connection issues on that last stop. He's still on the lead lap, but does that kind of weigh in your mind a little bit, make you a little bit worried?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he already found himself trapped a lap down at the midway portion of the first half of this race, and certainly does not want to have that happen again. He did not have these connection problems last season and was up there in the conversation, as we've well documented, for the race win before getting involved in that last wreck. So the last thing he wants to do here today is to have internet connection issues be the reason that he's not in the conversation once again for this checkered flag.
Absolutely, and that's just kind of the redemption tour kind of ends with that, where, listen, it's not much of a redemption tour if you don't have a shot at it.
That's interesting. I'm looking right now at our top 5. Only one of them took part in the Indy 500 last season. That was A.J. Hobson. Bennett, Schaus, Evans, and Stafford all making their first Indy 500 starts. And so right now, if you're Craig Forsyth back there in 6th, you're looking and saying, who are these people?
I mean, I really like A.J. Hobson here because he only led 1 lap last season, but man, he has just been kind of sneaking around here all day.
We still have 23 drivers scored in the race. Jimmy Drynan and Gary Corley, who were caught up in that latest wreck on the front straightaway, they are still sitting on pit road getting damage repair done to their machines. 6 laps down for Corley, 94 of Jimmy Drynan is 8 laps down. I believe both of those drivers having to do manual repairs because they had already utilized their fast repair. Alex Coates had not. I think he used his faster pair under the last yellow, but because he could not make it back to pit road, he lost 2 laps under pacing, right now in the 21st position.
You're exactly correct on that, but that's just a huge killer for him. It takes him right out of the fight.
So for the drivers that ended up getting back on the lead lap under that last caution, Charles Teed, by virtue of being ahead of the race leader, Kobe Moore, by virtue of being the first car 1 lap down, they right now are running in the 15th and 16th position, and we know that the field gets spread out. We're seeing it here even again after the restart, and we know it's going to get spread out if we go into a long green flag run and have green flag pit stops. When your drivers that are back there, like Wagner and Teed and Moore, you've got yourself a shot to be able to get back up here to the front again. Obviously, you've got to hit the go button sooner than these guys up here at the front, but how do you gauge when that has to be?
Really, it's kind of one of those feeling it out scenarios. You kind of have to use your gut instinct a little bit. Here's the thing. With 120 left to go, or 120, or lap 120 of 200, personally, I'd be kind of in that area of I would wait. I don't think that we'd be able to go all the way to oceans. About lap 180, I mean, that's when I'm kind of a split decision whether is there going to be another caution or can I make it to the end on this?
Well, we saw drivers not all that anxious to be double wide in the early stages of this race. Now we are going side by side in several portions of our top 10. Saw Craig Forsyth and Polo Hernandez, they were side by side. Rick Ravon and Bronson Stafford, they were side by side up ahead. Forsyth looking again to the inside of Hernandez, and ahead of them you got Eric Schaus and Cohen Evans in a dogfight for the 3rd position. Now you see that black and green car just up ahead of him. That is Jim Brooks in the 51, who just a couple of laps ago came down pit lane for what I can only assume was an unscheduled stop. It now traps him a lap down.
That's exactly what you don't want. I wonder if he just didn't put enough fuel in it, didn't think he managed to make it all the way, but that kind of puts a nail in his coffin there where, listen, I don't know if he really can get that back, and again, I don't know how many more cautions are going to be.
Yeah, he only spent 6 seconds in his pit stall, so that would say to me kind of exactly the scenario you just pointed out, kind of topping off the fuel tank, maybe not getting that thing completely full of fuel, and Jim Brooks along with Gale Brooks have been the 2 drivers that have been able to find longevity in the tank. They've been able to stretch it the furthest when we had those 2 round of green flag pit stops.
Absolutely, and that's the thing where a lot of these drivers, you have a few decisions here, and I wonder if some of the guys in the back are doing this, but you have the option to go less power mode. These engines have 6 power modes, 1 being the most powerful, you get everything you got, 6 being, well, we're trying to turn it on a little bit of a Prius mode here, save a little bit of fuel. I don't know how many drivers are really using 6, but I think some of the drivers may be bopping back to 2, 3, or 4, trying to whatever they can to make their pit stops go longer.
You notice Jim Brooks there down the inside line. And, the caution is out. Corey Lane.
Like 10.
Corey Lane, who we last season dubbed the Corey Lane up on the top side. He was riding the top side there through 3 and 4, but not necessarily the way he wanted to. And I'm almost wondering, Matt, we'll be looking back, but just the way that he was up in the wall, I'm almost wondering if this was something we were talking about earlier, where you're on the top side of a double wide formation, and that car on the inside line gets loose, and you're the one that goes up into the outside wall.
Honestly, it didn't even look like it was. It looks like he contacted James Watson, but I don't think the original contact was James. I almost think he lost it going into the next corner, but maybe I'm wrong.
You can just see how that car, the impact into the outside wall. Fortunately, the tethers on those front tires keep them attached to the race car, but that is a hard impact for Corey Lane, who you can double check me on this. I think he was another driver in an earlier incident that had already used his faster pair, so that could be an early exit for a driver that at this point was already 2 laps down.
Absolutely. That really kind of puts a damper in your race. Again, Corey Lane was already at that disadvantage. Now I think it's kind of one of those, well, I mean, what can we continue on from here?
Corey Lane last season finished 16th in the Indy 500 and involved in yet another incident here today. This one a high impact into that outside wall into turn 4. Caution's going to fly for the 5th time here today. And hey, remember when I told you that last caution had everybody good to go for 2 more pit stops? Well, this caution just messed everything up again.
Again, and that really puts nail in the coffin. Again, you have so many strategies and you're spending all this time thinking of well, what can I do here? Maybe I can save a little bit of fuel here. I can make it to this lap and I can make it the rest of the race on this. It just takes that paper, scrunches up, throws it in the trash can. All right, where can we go from here?
It was really interesting, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall of the pit box of the 51, because we saw him slow through 3 and 4. I assumed he was letting the lead lap cars on by because he was the only car scored -1 at the time, and so he knew if a caution came out, he would be getting the lucky dog. But I think just before that caution came out, it looked like Brooks was going to be heading back to pit road. He then turned the car back to the right when that yellow flag waved. He is going to get the lucky dog, but would love to have known why he was going to be coming back down pit lane, because it's certainly what it looked like. As Henry Bennett shows the way, we had about half of our lead lap cars come to pit lane, the other half deciding to stay out. And we're going to be getting ready to go back green flag racing with about maybe 75, 76, 77 laps left to go when the pace car finally decides to give us that 1 to green signal. But Bennett leads Hobson, Schaus, Hernandez, and Cohen Evans here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're going to step aside for another quick commercial break, and then we'll be back here for the restart in the Indianapolis 500 for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Pace car turns him loose. We're back under the green flag here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway as Henry Bennett gets us back underway. 77 laps remaining here today at the Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. AJ Hobson, Eric Schaus, second and third. Polo Hernandez and Cohen Evans, the top 5, as we've got a total of 18 drivers on the lead lap out of 20 drivers that are still out on the racetrack.
You know, I didn't mention him really that much earlier, but I still kind of regard Eric Schaus as one of those guys who really, maybe he is a dark horse, quote unquote, because really he qualified back in 24th position, just pretty much drove up 21 positions since start to get here in third, and he's in perfect spot.
Again, as I said, don't forget, we ended up running 2-mile speedway / super speedways this season at Auto Club in Michigan. In terms of speedway configuration, though, Pocono was the longest track that we ran, 2.5 miles in length, and Eric Schaus was your winner. So he's very good at the lengthy tracks, and another 2.5 mile speedway here today, albeit 4 corners that he has to deal with, but you certainly have to think that he's going to bring the speed and the experience into the closing stages of this race, maybe to pick up the victory. And remember, Schaus did not run the Indy 500 last season.
Well, I know you like stats. I mean, last season, the all podium spots were filled out by guys inside the top 10. And with, really Schaus being outside of the top 10 easily, 24th spot starting. And even Polo Hernandez started in 14th. AJ Hobson started in 12th.
Certainly a much different Indy 500 this season than when we saw it last season, to your point there, in terms of the fact that drivers that started outside of the top 10 have been able to work their way up here to the front. Some of them have been able to do it due to pit strategy, but most of them have been able to do it just in the way they've been able to cut their way through traffic with the fast machines they've got underneath them.
I think it's partially just having confidence in what you've got. Here's the thing, you can drive all day, but if you have no confidence in the car underneath you to shove it in 3 wide in the spot, you're not going to have a chance to get up there battling for the lead. But hey, if you have full confidence shoving your car in 2, 3 wide, and if you put it on this lane, it'll stick, that'll give you all the confidence in the world just to make whatever move you feel is necessary.
Right now, Eric Schaus has been the biggest mover of the race. He rolled off from the 25th position here today and now finds himself in a bit of a dogfight for 5th, 6th, 7th position as he got kicked up to the high side there, lost a spot to Cohen Evans, another spot to Craig Forsyth, now falls back into the clutches of Bronson Stafford for P6.
That shows you how one mistake can really just kind of shove you back in the field and how it's so vital. That's why I was really questioning Polo Hernandez's moves earlier, taking that outside line. Because again, just one wrong move, having to lift off the gas, you can easily slip back in the top 10.
So a driver that we talked about in the first half of this race quite a bit was up in the top 3 pretty much the first 75 to 90 laps of this event. Rick Ravon, he's now back in the 9th position. What is going on with the 2-car?
I don't know. I don't know if he's being more conservative. I've been seeing him run at least a little bit slower speeds than everyone else, but I don't know. I wonder if he just really is being conservative.
And right up on the back bumper there of Jim Herrick through 3 and 4, then backed off. Now he's going to actually use the momentum to pick up the position. Up ahead of him, though, a guy that is on the move. That is Cohen Evans. He was, I believe, 5th on that restart. He's looking for 3rd to the inside of Polo Hernandez, who, as we know, is very comfortable on that top side.
Yeah, Polo's really been attacking that outside lane, and he really has seemed like the only one brave enough to go up there. But he is almost kissing the wall out of these corners.
When we went back green, it was with 78 laps to go. Furthest number that we've seen drivers be able to really stretch it on fuel has been 34 laps. Guess what that is? That is half of the 78 laps remaining. So right now, projected, most of these drivers back in draft should be able to make it the rest of the way on one more pit stop. Driver I'm worried about, 63 of AJ Hobson, because we've seen if you're a driver that's out there creating the draft for everybody else, you usually have to come to pit road about 30 laps into a run.
Well, it's just kind of planning your strategy here of, again, we keep talking strategy, but it's so vital with these Indy cars, of them being so aerodynamic based. I mean, listen, one wrong move, even if you put a few extra gallons in the tank, that can affect your full on top end speed. That also could affect the end of the race, because again, some of these guys, they have it mapped down to the exact gallon, the exact decimal that they need of fuel. So it's, hey, why are we putting in all these extra gallons that are just going to slow us down? I just want half a tank.
Owen Evans tried to make the move there on the inside line, could not do it, and now we're starting to see that top line even more so come into play here, because it seems like if you go down to the inside line, you're obviously having to lift out of the throttle just a little bit to avoid that right front tire heat pushing you up the track into the car that's to driver's right. And that little bit of loss of momentum has cost Cohen Evans, dropping him from what was a battle for second back to 4th. We saw that happen a little bit earlier on in this race as well. So, I don't know. I mean, the shorter way around the racetrack is the inside line. Our drivers in the closing stages going to have to maybe think about going up to that second groove to make a pass for the win.
Well, I can see the allure of the outside lane of, hey, getting on that outside lets you carry a lot more speed to the corner, but obviously to make the corner and still keep up that speed, you've got to arc down at least to around the bottom of the track.
And I'm not certain what has happened here. We'll have to follow up on it, but a couple of drivers have DNF'd that, to my knowledge, were not involved in an incident. Corey Lane has gone to the garage area. We kind of expected that after he brought out the last caution. Joe McAdory, who was involved in an earlier incident, he fell out. He has now returned back in. But I'm seeing Jeff Heisong and Jim Herrick are no longer on the scoring, and I'm almost wondering if maybe there might have been some type of a thing where drivers might have fallen out and might have to return back to the server. But right now, 3 laps down is Heisong, 4 laps down is Jim Herrick, and I did not see any incident involving those two here during the course of this run.
If it is internet issues, that definitely is kind of a heartbreaker for them. But, I mean, again, kind of the internet issues do happen.
Right now, with those two currently not listed on the grid, only 15 drivers on the lead lap. Jim Herrick has now returned back into the server, so I think we can assume that it was a couple of drivers with connection problems en masse. McAdory, Herrick, and Jeff Heisong. We'll wait to see if Heisong returns back into the server as well in that 18 machine. As saw a driver a little bit out of shape back there. I think that actually might have been Kobe Moore in the 15 car. Matt Wagner, Charles Teed. Remember we talked about them outside of the top 15? Well, they're now running nose to tail, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So new life being breathed into these 3 drivers, and they could definitely be ones to watch here in the closing stages.
Really, as the track runs down here, you got to start planning your move. And I know it's a little bit early with 137 of 203, but you got to start looking like, well, if I want to make this move on the outside, how much time am I going to need to complete this? Where do I need to start making the move? If I get the draft on this guy, how quickly can I run up on him? Can I pass him like this, or am I going to have to wait till next corner?
I want to give a little bit of a special shout out to one driver in particular, just based off of the hard luck he has had the last couple of weeks at Speedways. That's Eric Peterson, still in the running. Oh, and as soon as I mention him, there's a wreck ahead of him, and look at him avoid his way through. Wow, the commentator's curse did not strike. I'm amazed.
I think he used the Uno reverse card there, just did not want to be a part of that.
Dale Brooks, Eric Schaus, and Rick Ravon were the 3 drivers involved in that one there through the middle of 3 and 4.
Ay.
The entire right side, or make that left side of Gale Brooks' machine is ripped off. Left front and right and left rear tires missing.
That's a lot of good cars out just like that.
It is. You're absolutely right. I don't know if any of those drivers had used a fast repair. I don't think they had. So they would at least have one still remaining for them. The problem is that at least for Gale Brooks, not certain about the other 2, but he had to actually teleport back to pit road. Ravon had to do the same.
I think that may be all she wrote for Charles Teed as well. It looks like he broke his right front suspension in that wreck.
Oh, no.
I think that's all over. I mean, the wing's gone. The wing can be replaced. The suspension, though, and he lost the mirror, surprisingly. But the suspension is going to be the biggest killer for that car.
Wow, you saw that contact there. Not once, but twice. Actually, Eric Schaus, he was involved, so to speak, but he was able to drive away, never actually spun out, and it looks like maybe the 2 just gets a little too high off of turn 1, and he turns it back to the left. Schaus is there, and then he misjudged, tucking in behind 72 going into the turn 2 entry, up and into the wall, and then here's the tough part, is he comes back down into the racing lane, and there's going to be some oncoming traffic, I do believe. No, actually, what was there, a follow-up wreck that took place in another portion of the track?
I think it was really on pit lane, or at least the access road, when it looks like, I'm trying to see here, it looks like on the 71 of Gale Brooks started coming down the track. He ended up blocking the access road a little bit, and that sort of made contact between him and Teed started, and it looks like behind them with James Watson also getting into it as well.
Oh, wow, you're right. Actually, that incident that we just saw there with Rick Ravon did not bring out the yellow, surprisingly enough.
here's the thing. You kind of have to feel for some of these guys. I mean, Eric Schaus obviously is in that situation that, hey, he's got a fast repair remaining. He can still kind of come out on this. But I remember kind of hearing Gail Brooks over the radio kind of very rapidly saying, I'm sorry. I mean, he kind of gets the intensity and what this event means to a lot of these guys. And again, you just never want to end the race like this.
Hard to tell if maybe he got his left front down there just below that white line where there's not a whole heck of a lot of grip, or if that could be attributed to what we were talking about, the possibility of over-adjusting your race car here for this run with the driver aids available to the drivers inside these machines.
Absolutely, and I don't know if it was over-adjustment or just... Again, these tires do wear down, and maybe he was just used to how the car felt, maybe on older tires, maybe on newer tires. I don't know. There's a variety of things it could have been.
Well, we kind of saw him maneuver his way through Eric Peterson. We're going to take the onboard, show just how close this was. Probably should have been involved in this wreck in one of two places. There you're going to see up ahead the smoke. There he is, avoiding one, avoiding two, and goes on his merry way.
And then there was, I believe, 18 left in the race. We started with 29 and we're down to 18. That just shows you how much of an endurance race this is. I mean, we weren't joking about it. I mean, it is a literal endurance race where you have to plan out your race. You have to plan to avoid wrecks. You have to plan your pit strategy. And, things happen. Like, again, multiple drivers ended up dropping out due to internet. I mean, just caused in events that you had no fault in, and that hurts.
You mentioned the possibility of Charles Teed's day being over. That's indeed the case. He has gone back to the garage area, so he'll join Jeff Hysong, Corey Lane, Gary Corley, and a number of others back behind the wall. And you talked about the Indy 500 kind of being an endurance race and a race of attrition. Case in point, last season's Indianapolis 500, 24 drivers took the green flag. Only 11 of them finished on the lead lap, and 10 of them crossed the start-finish line without damage. At the conclusion of that race, Matt Wagner had gotten involved in a wreck and limped that machine across the line in 11th place. So, very much so the same here today. 29 drivers took the green flag to start today's race, and as you pointed out, right now only 12 of them on the lead lap of about 17 that are going to be still running when we get this restart.
Yeah, you've been talking about it. What an up and down race Wagner has had.
Oh yeah,
man, he is went from laps down to he was in the lead, blinked across the line, lost the lap, got a black flag on pit road, ended up getting his lap back. I mean, he blinked out again, had that mini heart attack, and then he's back here in 5th.
And also a comeback run for Covey Moore. Covey Moore got involved in the wreck, the first caution of the day, and he was a lap down, got back in the lead lap. He's up here in 7th place, so keep an eye on those two. As Matt Wagner, he started from the pole last season, got involved in that last caution and finished 11th. Didn't get the pole this season, rolled off from 5th place. Maybe starting on pole is the combination he needed to be able to pick up the or not starting the pole might be the combination he needs to be able to close out the deal with a trip to victory lane, a checkered flag, to have a bookend season here in Season 3.
It's always superstitions. Like, here's the thing, like, I've heard people say, hey, I'll always wear my lucky necklace while I'm racing because somehow it helps me avoid the big one. Listen, everyone has their superstitions, and maybe some of them work, but hey, whatever brings you more luck or makes you more confident to send it in that corner, hey, all for it.
You have a superstition to get through big ones?
I usually just follow you through it, but that typically ends us having a giant pile up in it. So
I usually close my eyes, so you're following a person that doesn't see where he's going, so that's a bad strategy. You might have to rethink that strategy. Speaking of strategy, we've got some strategy up here at the front. Drivers trying to figure out who wants to be the one to lead. Polo Hernandez and Henry Bennett, they've been swapping that top position back and forth the last couple of laps.
See, this is not really a situation where you say, hey, let me take the lead. You want to save gas here. And again, you want to go for the lead. You want to lead laps. You want to dominate this race. But you got to think of the big picture here of, hey, I got to save fuel. I got to plan out this last pit stop because I want to be carrying at my number of fuel in this car. I do not want to carry 1 gallon extra.
It's kind of interesting, too, because obviously with these cautions, it's bunched these drivers back up. multiple times, and I think we've kind of entered into another stage of racing, which is the kind of go to school racing. Size yourself up now to your competition. You've been running nose to tail, minding your P's and Q's. Now you've got to start setting yourself up for the final 10, 15 laps of this race. Figure out where your strengths are and where their weaknesses are. And I think right now what we're kind of doing is we're kind of figuring out between the 007 and the 01, as well as also AJ Hobson, of, if I make this move here, am I going to be the first one back to the start finish line? Because let's be honest, it could be half a car length that's going to decide today's race, and it could come down to that move out of turn 4. Who's the one that gets to make it?
But here's the thing, you also kind of have to keep yourself in that moment, because you're seeing them battle 2, 3 wide up here. And you've got to think, hey, one of these guys could easily hook one another, and that's another caution that completely demolishes my strategy here.
Now, one thing we do know, that these drivers, while they are racing up here to figure out who's going to lead them back to the start-finish line lap after lap, they will have to make one more visit to pit road before the conclusion of this race. Projected, these drivers can make it to about 34 laps, or make that 36 laps remaining in this race. Some could come down as soon as 38 laps to go to be able to make it the rest of the way as well. So we're going to have to see on which side of the coin these drivers are going to decide to be, whether they're going to try and pit as soon as the fuel window opens, or to try and come down as late as possible, take on the less amount of fuel as possible, and spend the least amount of time on pit road.
Let's think about it here for a minute. The undercut is strong. Getting an undercut on your competition here. But the problem that lies in that is, if you undercut, unless you've got someone around you, it is pointless. Because again, you need people around you. You need someone to draft with to kind of help you get up through the field. And that just doesn't happen if you pit early. Unless you've got teammates who are willing to kind of help you on that strategy. But I don't know how many one of those guys want to go out in like a kind of a bonker strategy saying, hey, let's run the race in reverse here. And then if we wait till later on, well, now we got to deal with a congested pit road, and everyone's got to come in at the same time, where if we come in early, listen, we've got probably 5-6 laps of excess fuel in the tank. I can choose when I come down, but if we run it all the way out, listen, if I miss pit lane, I miss pit lane, and I don't have any fuel left in the car.
Here's the thing. We've seen no matter where you come to pit road from, you're more than likely going to come out of pit road one lap down. Do you want to run that risk with pitting early just in case a caution may come out in an untimely fashion and trap you -1 to the rest of the leaders?
Well, that's another one we got to think about. Again, if you pit early, yeah, you've got fresh tires, yeah, you've got fuel to make it to the end of the race, but if caution comes out, maybe about 20 laps into your run, are you willing to come right back down, get another set of tires, fill yourself back up? Or are you going to be content with what you got, where, hey, maybe... I'm throwing this out as a hypothetical. Let's say Eric Peterson pitted one lap before the caution came out. He's in perfect position. He doesn't have to pit.
I think it's going to be track position over everything. I don't see why you would put yourself back in traffic just to be able to take on fresh rubber, especially with the fact that we saw earlier on in this race, Jimmy Drynan and Gary Corley, they stayed out on 15-lap old tires and still were able to keep themselves up there for a good number of laps inside of the top 5, maintaining track position.
To be honest, the only person I really can see taking that risk would be Polo Hernandez, just because he's been able to make that outside work for him just every time he heads up there. So I can see him being the only one wanting to take that.
Right now, 2 of our podium finishers from last season are still in this race, still on the lead lap. Craig Forsyth, the defending winner, holding down the 4th position, but keep an eye on the guy who got the free pass under the last caution, or 2 cautions to go, I should say. Jim Brooks in that 51 finished 3rd here 1 year ago. There you see his green machine coming off of turn number 2. Right now, battling with Covey Moore for the 8th position. You've got to bet he's going to be up here in the closing stages once again, 2 seasons in a row.
And just looking back at this race, just looking at our biggest movers. Oh, someone's spinning in the back. Looks like Cohen Evans.
No caution yet. I don't think we're going to get one.
Off the racing surface.
No yellow flag, 55 laps to go, now on to 54, and Cohen Evans, last thing that he wanted to see, not only a torn up race car, but no caution to get him bunched back up with the race leaders.
Just a kind of a brief overview of that. It looks like they got about 3 wide. He was on the bottom and just got a little bit loose. But I tell you, Bronson Stafford's going to need to change his pants after this one, because he was almost in it.
Hobson Hernandez continue to swap the lead. We're going to jump back here, see if we can capture the footage of what happened there to Cohen Evans in the middle of 3 and 4. Very tough break for him, a driver that's pretty much been up in the top 10 all day long, and this was a battle around the 7th, 8th position at the time.
I mean, it just really looks like a tough break, but, big props to him for spinning it to the inside of the racetrack and not trying to hook it right back up, trying to save it.
Hard impact into the inside wall and towards the back of the lead pack, and so therefore no oncoming traffic, plus he did not come back up onto the racing surface, so no caution coming out to save him. That's the second incident we've had today where a caution has not come out. The other one was not too long ago when Rick Ravone spun around. I believe that was also in the middle of 3 and 4, but no yellow flag came out for his incident. Rick is actually still on the racetrack, albeit the first car 1 lap down. Gail Brooks also 1 lap down. Those two battling for the lucky dog should a caution come out, and they're only separated by about half a second between those two.
Well, you got to think around the top 10 where that incident happens. Do you think any of those guys kind of race a little bit more conservatively now, seeing that what happens when you go 3 wide and kind of push it like that?
Nope, I don't think so. Listen on 50 laps to go. A lot of times, too, we're talking about this race as if it's a super speedway, just based on the way that, we talk about draft. We talk about coming to pit road with some friends. We talk about setting up the driver in front of you for a pass. Well, if we want to talk about the fact as well of this green flag pit stop coming up, this is what we would call the money stop. Everybody should be able to make it to the conclusion when they hit pit lane this final time. So many times with the stock cars at super speedways, we hear the phrase, setting yourself up for that final pit stop with what you do on the racetrack. So I think you're going to continue to see these drivers try and pick up every spot possible.
They're just 2 by 2 up here. Now we finally decide to kind of straighten it out there, but you gotta be wondering, are these guys really trying to save fuel or just trying to get ahead of one another?
I don't think you need to save fuel at this point in time, to be honest, because it doesn't matter when you come to pit road, as long as you're within the fuel window, you're going to reach the conclusion. I think all these drivers right now are in what I was talking about, that go to school period. Figure out where you can make moves so that way you know later on in the race what options will be available to you when there's maybe a car between you and that checkered flag on the final lap.
Just looking back here a little bit, I really kind of wonder what Matt Wagner's thinking here, because I have to believe he's saving fuel a little bit, because I know his speeds aren't exactly up to snuff of what the top 4 are doing, and that could be that he's just not tucked up in the draft enough with them. But I'm thinking he may be running a lower engine mode just a little bit, maybe just trying to save just a few gallons.
Let's see if we can maybe find out. Let's go inside of that car, take a look and see if maybe we can find out some secrets with the panel on the steering wheel there. Not really certain if we can tell from there. I don't know really enough about how Indy cars work to know what exactly I'm looking at. I know the 6 means 6th gear, but that's about all I know as far as IndyCar knowledge.
Absolutely, and unfortunately I've got a little bit too much glare to see. My apologies, my sunglasses are not in yet.
So Wagner right now in that 5th position. Eric Schaus still there in 6th. Eric Peterson in 7th. The thing that these guys have to do from about 5th place on back, you mentioned that gap right now between 4th place Craig Forsyth and 5th place Matt Wagner. They have to make sure that whenever they come to pit road, that they're going to be leaving pit road still in the vicinity of these top 4, because very likely if a gap opens up here under green flag conditions before that pit stop begins, it could end up coming down to a 4-horse race if these guys all come out together and we see the big gaps like we have been seeing from 5th place on back.
And again, no one's racing this race to get 2nd place. Everyone's going for the win, but it's trying to find your correct strategy to get there. That's the biggest question, because I know that Polo Hernandez really wants to get in front of Hobson, but just Hobson's doing such a great job at blocking, kind of taking away that top line that he's utilized a lot.
Yeah, we've seen Hernandez make a lot of passes on the top side in the first half of this race. See if he drives it deep here into turn 1, and he will clear for the position. We're actually starting to see that inside line come into play a little bit more now than we did before. It seemed like drivers, when they would go on the inside line, they'd kind of wave the proverbial white flag, say, okay, nope, I don't like the situation I'm in. They'd back out and lose a couple of positions. Now, these drivers seem to be driving in on that inside line with no fear of, hey, I'm keeping this thing wide open. You better hope I'm clear on you, or at least feather your throttle so that way we don't make contact.
I mean, Seth, we haven't really mentioned it as much, but Jim Brooks has really kind of started to break his way into the top 10.
Jim Brooks was the only driver in the top 5 finishing results in last year's Indy 500 that did not lead a lap. Now, he has led a lap here today. He, along with Gale Brooks, played some pit strategy back during that long green flag run where we had 2 green flag pit stops in that span, and Jim Brooks did lead at least 1 lap during the course of that long green flag run. So, at least gets himself a lap led here today that he didn't have 1 season ago, but we'll see if he can finish up on the podium in back-to-back seasons. And you mentioned about these drivers, nobody racing to finish second place. It's even more so with the situation we had coming into this season finale. These drivers all trying to close out the season with a victory. There is no championship on the line. Robert Maleska III, 10-time winner, had that championship in hand here tonight. He had it actually in hand about 6 weeks ago. Over 200 points between himself and Alex Van de Sant coming into this race, and actually the top 3 in the point standings coming to this race did not partake in today's main event, this 200 lappers. So even more on the line for these drivers to be able to try and kiss the yard of bricks at the conclusion of not only this race, but what's been a tremendous 3rd season in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series.
So to say this race is almost kind of like a bravery test of just what are you willing to do and what are you willing to kind of, how are you willing to pass the car in front of you? Are you going to try and shove it in and hope they lift, or you're just kind of catering around them?
Yeah, I mean, kind of almost like maybe a game of chicken. You know, who's going to blink first?
Why'd the chicken cross the road?
Well, I mean, you're sizing up your opponent, so maybe do you play a little bit of mind games? Like, yeah, I'm not going to race you right now. You go on ahead, but then later on, if it comes down between you two, it's, hey, you know what? I was playing possum. I'm actually willing to take this risk.
Well, I mean, if you want to pull a power move, just try and shove it in the one when they're on the bottom line and you have a little bit of opening right below them. It depends. Are we going to come down and block, or are we going to pull up and give you the lane? That's going to be the question.
Well, we mentioned about Jeff Heisong having the connection woes and not returning back to the server. He'll finish in 20th. Charles Teed, we documented out of the race, finishing in 19th place. So 18 cars right now scored on the racetrack, and 11 of them right now on the lead lap. One of them we haven't talked a whole lot about. I think the only time I've mentioned his name today was when he came down pit road during the green flag pit stops. But how about James Watson? Right now, holding down to that 11th spot, been very quiet all day, but still on the lead lap, in a chance to get a top 10 run in this one-off race.
And just looking here, I don't know if anyone's really comfortable trying the bottom line in some of these corners. I mean, everyone wants to seems like they want to go single file back about outside the top 5, but other than that, I just don't know.
These drivers will have to be on pit road within the next 11 laps, which will be with about 31 to 34 laps to go, right in the fuel window to be able to make it the rest of the way. As Polo Hernandez leads the field, Hobson second, Bennett third, Forsyth and Wagner after his up and down race. He now completes the top 5. The other drivers on the lead lap, Eric Schaus in 6th, Eric Peterson in 7th, Covey Moore, who spent a good portion of this race off the lead lap, he's in 8th with Bronson Stafford, Jim Brooks completing the top 10, and James Watson, the last car on the lead lap, in the 11th position. But the question is, as we close in on 40 laps to go, will it be these 11 to battle it out for the victory, or will we maybe see a couple more incidents before conclusion and even less drivers in the conversation for this win?
Kind of looking... I mean, look at Covey Moore. He's snuck his way back up here from a lap down. I mean, Eric Schaus, after getting that faster break, he's back up in here. I mean, just look at all these guys.
A lot of drivers that have really had struggling seasons could cap off a season with a high note, a trip to victory lane. Guys that would kind of fit that, Craig Forsyth, AJ Hobson, and Eric Peterson. And you've got drivers that have had very consistent seasons, but they have not been able to find victory lane due to the DeGroots and Maleskas and Van de Sants. Guys that would fit that would be Covey Moore in that 15 machine and Jim Brooks in the 51.
And just look here, I mean, Bronson Stafford and Jim Brooks are really just kind of going at it here. Same with Eric Peterson. And wouldn't it just kind of be ironic that Eric Peterson kind of gets his first oval of the season in his last race, or first oval top 10 of the season in his last race of the season?
That'd be huge. I mean, if you folks are just tuning into this race and have not been following this season, especially down this home stretch with the speedways we've been at, they have just not been Eric Peterson's friend. He was barrel rolling on the front straightaway at Pocono. He was airborne and on his roof at Michigan. And so, to your point, Matt, to cap off the season with not only his first win, but his first top 10 at a speedway, that would be huge for the 36, and he's done exactly what he's needed to do here in the first 3 quarters of this race. Keep himself out of trouble. He had a couple of near moments with that one caution about 25 laps ago, but he's been able to keep his nose clean. And a number of these guys up here at the front, too, even if we do have that late race yellow, and if they're involved in it, a number of these guys still have that faster pair available to them.
Absolutely, and it's a nice safety net. But I mean, I always say this at the end of these races where I feel if I have a faster pair sitting in my bank and I didn't use it, I feel like I didn't push hard enough. And if I've used my faster pair and I've got nothing at the end of the race, I feel like I've pushed too hard.
All right, here's a question. Now, obviously, we really haven't seen contact exchanged up here at the front, but no doubt that these cars have been dealing with a little bit of wear and tear. On this final pit stop, is it worth doing the faster pair then if you still have it?
I would do it if I had any damage, but we have Joe McAdory currently coming down pit road 2 laps down. But if I had that faster pair and I feel I have a little bit of damage on the car, I would use it. But if I didn't, I'd want to get back the because we still at least a little bit left in this race where something could go wrong.
Great point. We're going to have about 30 laps to go once these drivers, if they are able to do a green flag pit stop cycle here, once that is completed. So yeah, still plenty of time for an incident to take place if you need to have that faster pair.
Paulo Hernandez on Penn Road.
Yep, and this is interesting because this would be way too early according to my calculations. Jim Herrick also on pit road. These drivers, if they were going to make it on fuel, they needed to come down pit road another 3-4 laps from now, which, according to what I saw, Paulo Hernandez should have been able to make it another 2 laps at least, just based on the amount of time he spent out in front on this run.
Maybe he feels like this is enough for him. He just gets maybe the ultimate undercut. I don't know, but I guess he felt like he had to come in now because he really came down the track.
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting. He may know something we don't know up here in the booth, but
James Watson's on pit road too.
And he would have been the last car on the lead lap. These guys are now coming down at 29 laps completed here in this stint.
I wonder if he feels because the leader's doing it, he probably should replicate it. Maybe he knows something that someone else doesn't.
Well, I mean, if they were going to make it the rest of the way, in order to absolutely guarantee I wouldn't be coming down pit road at least for another 2, if possible 3 laps, kind of split this final segment from the last caution to the checkered flag in half. 33 laps on one stint, 33 laps on the second stint.
It's a bold move. I'm just not sure of it.
Henry Bennett now is actually going to get the race lead from A.J. Hobson. Hobson, as soon as the 0-1 dove to pit road, said, nope, I don't want the race lead, and gave it to
Hobson's
the double
coming to pit road this time. He just announced over radio he's coming to pit road.
So this would be closing out on the 33 laps to go. This is around the time where if I were out there, I think I would be coming to pit road because you would at least be in the fuel window to make it the rest of the way. Bear in mind, however, too, if we're talking in terms of racing at a super speedway, when you have less cars in a pack, that's going to really kill the amount of speed that you produce and hurt the amount of time it takes for you to get around the racetrack. So we kind of have to throw that into the equation as well on whether these guys can make it on fuel or not, dependent on how big a group they come off of pit road with.
Partially, I'm thinking the reason Matt Wagner's still staying out is he's kind of remembering burned at Michigan, and he's like, I don't know if I really want to do that one again.
Right now, he would be in the 3rd position behind Craig Forsyth and race leader Henry Bennett. Looks like only the drivers we documented, Watson, Hobson, and McAdory, have been the ones to come to pit road here at this point in time, as well as Paulo Hernandez. Let's see if Bennett's going to dive to pit road. No, he is not. That's the 2 just up ahead of him. First car 1 lap down, Rick Ravon, that is now hitting pit lane.
Man, he really fell off. He was battling for the lead about midway through the race, and then just something happened, and he has not been competitive ever since.
Toby Moore is going to dive onto pit road, lead lap car from the 6th position. So he'll come down for his final pit stop of the day. And now, if Henry Bennett and company, if they can stretch it another 2 laps, they are guaranteed, even if they were out there on the racetrack all by themselves, that they'd be able to make it the rest of the way on fuel, because we know that a driver can stretch it single car 30 laps in length.
I'm just seeing a bunch of guys dive down the pit road here at the moment. Henry Bennett, Eric Schaus, Bronson Stafford, Jim Brooks, and Eric Peterson all down pit road.
All these drivers pitting as race leader. Now Craig Forsyth takes 31 laps to go. So the question is, which flag are these guys racing to? Is it the white flag, or could it very well be a yellow flag between now and the finish of this race? 30 laps will be set to decide it when these pit stop cycles are completed. Only 2 drivers still to come to pit lane that are on the lead lap to finish this out. And Forsyth is now coming to pit lane along with Matt Wagner. So this completes it. 30 laps remaining. Right now, Polo Hernandez ahead of Henry Bennett according to our live scoring. He will more than likely be inheriting the race lead. And again, why I find this a little bit of a question mark for the 0-1 is he was one of the first ones on pit lane. If he's going to be inheriting the race lead and cutting the draft for drivers once again, that's even more fuel consumption. I don't think, this is just my opinion, but I don't think this 0-1 can make it to the checkered flag with what he's got in the tank, the way things are playing out right now.
To be honest, if I was at 0-1, as soon as I got off pit road, I would have put it in engine mode 6 and just started driving around and just trying to save as much fuel as I can. And then as I'm getting ready to rejoin the majority of the field, all right, that's when we bop it back down to maybe 1, 2, or 3 and see if we can really compete and try to save fuel. But maybe he knows something we don't.
Very well could.
Good evening, guys. Sorry for the late attendance. I mean, it's the middle of God knows when over here in Australia, so my wife is having to put up with the sounds of my voice while she's still sleeping soundly away in the next room over. Look, I mean, in terms of the fuel save mode, there's 2 options, right? The guy can absolutely just go bananas, go berserk, and just go for it, or he can try and save what you're saying. If he can get away, everyone else is in fuel save mode right now, so if he just all of a sudden just puts the hammer down and makes them have to blink and come after him, he could win the race that way too. That's another alternative.
Right now he's got a little less than a second back to this 3-way battle for second place, which actually involves the lap machine of Joe McAdory. It's Forsyth and Bennett that are battling for P2. Matt Wagner in the 3rd position, about 1.8 seconds back. And then Eric Schaus currently about 2.2 seconds behind the race leader, holding down that 5th position. After those pit stops were completed, all 11 drivers that were still on the lead lap remain on the lead lap back to James Watson, but they are spread out by about 8 seconds.
So I noticed something really interesting when Forsyth was trying to go around Henry Bennett. I mean, Bennett started to put up a fight, and then it almost looked like he slammed on the brakes, just didn't want to do it, and really just let Forsyth have it. I wonder if he's just kind of waiting to see who's the winner of the battle between Forsyth and Hernandez to really make his move.
Forsyth's going to move by Hernandez to the point. Remember, he came to pit road only 2 laps ago. Hernandez came to pit road 8 laps ago, so advantage to the 27 in terms of the fuel he's got in the tank. Wonder if maybe he's trying to see if he wants to be that lead car possibly on the final lap, as now Bennett gets into the vicinity again, as well as that 4 of Joe McAdory. You got to wonder about McAdory. I mean, what is he thinking right now? Actually, that's not McAdory. My apologies. It's a similarly colored machine. That's actually the 2 of Rick Ravon, first car 1 lap down. I mean, is he thinking right now, I got to get by these guys, get myself back onto the tail end of the lead lap the hard way, much like Charles T did earlier? Or is he just trying to just keep himself in the vicinity of that first car 1 lap down, should a caution come out, and get the free pass?
Obviously, he's racing to keep himself or get himself back on the lead lap, but what he's really doing is he's providing a lot of challenge to Henry Bennett back there, because he's locking Bennett out of those lines that he wants to take. And what he's also doing is, hey, he's making a hole for Bennett where if Bennett wants to follow him, he can really just easily get past Forsyth and maybe Hernandez.
He's going to actually pass Forsyth sliding second car in line. It looks like he is going to try and get himself at least to the front to show the way here, have himself scored on the tail end of the lead lap. So right now, 12 drivers on the lead lap with that pass that you just saw. You also saw a car down there on the apron. He's been running the access road for the last couple of laps, and that's the 37 of Alex Coates. He is 7 laps down, 4 laps behind Jim Herrick, who to my knowledge is up to speed, so looks like he's just trying to finish out this race with his car running, but obviously way off the pace. Cohen Evans on pit road in the 17. Was involved in that wreck over in 3 and 4. Did not bring out a caution. He did have a faster pair he was able to use, but he is 1 lap down and will probably lose a second lap here, making his final pit stop of the day.
Means that, look, we are at the pointy end of this thing. If you are not in that lead group right now, you need that caution. Let's talk about that for a moment, because that is demoralizing. Have a look at the number of cars that we've got on the lead lap of this thing. Have a look at the number of cars that we've got within 5 seconds of the lead of this thing. The guys, Eric Peterson, Bronson Stafford, and Covey Moore and Jim Brooks, that little battle pack right there, they need to go. They've got to. And unfortunately, they've just got to throw fuel right out the window, throw caution to the wind, and just have a crack at it. Because if they don't get up to this race now, start driving a few of these guys out their fuel windows and throwing some curveballs at them, this race is going to be over before they can. It's
Looks
got to
like
be
AJ Hobson may have gotten into Eric Peterson a little bit. Or Eric Schaus, actually.
Keep it together, however. He still remain under the green flag. You know, you bring up that point there, Scott. Obviously, these cars are entirely different to stock cars. If you're racing at a super speedway with stock cars, you line up single file nose to tail, that's going to produce the most speed. But with the draft here with these Indy cars, the runs that you get, you really don't have that option going into the corners. I mean, we saw them there all single file, those 5 down the back straightaway, and then they fanned out, double wide going into the corner. How in the world are you able to manipulate a group of drivers to create enough speed to reel in that lead group without running each other over?
You got to create what they term the slingshot effect. You build up that huge run, and then the lead car has just got to let it happen. Right now, you're not fighting for position. That's if you wanna actually get out there and you wanna actually win the motor race, you gotta throw away personal pride right at this phase. Look, 25 laps from now, 20 to 25 laps from now, yeah, 100%, start fighting the guy, stop letting it happen, a change of things in the last 10 laps. But if you want to win, if you want to win at the Indy 500, it's the same as any motor race. There is a time for personal pride and glory, and there is a time for teamwork, and right now that group is in the teamwork phase still. Unfortunately, the guys out in front, they're battling. They're reading each other. They're deciding who is going to build themselves up and have that run on the very last lap. That is happening right now. But much, much further back, it's just not something they can afford to do if they want the win. If they don't think they're capable of the win, by all means, go for it, boys.
I've got something to add upon that, which is if you're going up against a friend, I mean, hey, I'm not sure how well these top 4 know each other, but hey, if you're going up against someone that you know and you know how they drive and you know how they race, I mean, does that affect you any? Does that kind of change your mindset of, well, I know they'll do this, but they'll know I'll do that? I mean, does that kind of psych yourself out, or do you just try it anyway?
Yeah, in different phases of the race. Look, I mean, I'm always of the opinion that when you're in a major event like this, when you're in what is effectively an endurance event, you're sitting in the simulator for right now we're at 2.5 hours. We're coming up on that 3-hour mark. You definitely have a go time. You definitely have a time where you're punching out laps, and that is part and parcel of it. You're trying to position yourself strategically, but the ultimate goal is to preserve the car, is to preserve your machinery, is to preserve fuel, is to preserve tires. You cannot afford to create an incident for yourself in that early phase of the race, and all of these guys are now at the back end of that phase. They've got to pick a lap number. They will have a lap number in mind whereby they will just go for it and throw caution to the wind and not really care. And I mean, look at Rick Ravon right now. He's obviously, the position that he's in, he's past that lap number because of where he is on the on the racing circuit. He's right, but in that lead group, and that is not good for him. He needs to get that lap back. He needs a caution to come his way, but he's also going to make sure that he's there ready to take it. And unfortunately, that means he's got to take a few extra risks. And you know what? That doesn't play into the leader's hands, because if he's right there and he's running with Polo Hernandez, that guy doesn't want to take risks. He's at the lead of the motor race. He's got control of this thing. He's doing everything he needs to do to win this. And to have a lapped car that is fighting for lead lap status, you're at this really pointy end of the motor race that actually tells a much, much bigger story, and it throws another spanner in the works that he just doesn't want there.
I mean, here's the thing. If I'm the lead car, if I'm Polo Hernandez, I'm rooting on Rick. I'm saying, yeah, keep on, keep doing that, keep doing that. If I'm two guys behind him, Henry Bennett or Matt Wagner, my apologies, yeah. Or, sorry, Forsyth and Bennett, I'd be screaming, like, what are you doing?
Right now, you could throw a blanket over the top four. Matt Wagner still is in the draft here, and he could get up here in the vicinity if he wanted to. He might also be able to get Eric Schaus and AJ Hobson. I think they are still within striking distance, able to get just a sniff of draft to get up here in the closing stages as well. But you know, one thing that I've been kind of noticing here with these drivers, this back and forth, is they have been giving each other room. And Matt and I were talking about this earlier, Scott, with the fact that when you're making a pass earlier on in this race, you make the move midway down the straightaway, letting them know, hey, I'm there. I'm going to be on your inside when we get into the corner. Please give me the space necessary so that the both of us don't wreck. When we start getting into the latter portions of the race, that's when we start to see the late moves take place.
You know, I can't
Yeah,
even
100%.
imagine. Oh, my apologies.
No, we both got the same idea, I think. Yeah, you're 100% right. You want to throw it late. I mean, if you talk about road courses are really, really good sort of pseudonym, a good way to talk about the way that the Indy cars go out and do their job, because it is very, very similar. You're going to want to pull out late, and you're 100% right on that, and the reason for it is all of a sudden preservation and letting that guy ahead know what you're doing, not important anymore. You want to hold all the cards. You want to play your cards late. I mean, it's like showing up to a poker table, right? And just laying down that you've got an ace and a 4 at the start of the hand. 5 and a 6 flop out on the table. All of a sudden, you've got a reasonable hand, and then all of a sudden, the hand just goes completely and utterly away from you. You just don't want to show that hand to everybody. You ain't going to show that. Why? Why would you? There's no benefit to it, except to your ego, you know? So, look, these guys, they're in. It is. This, I think, is probably the hardest phase of the race, because you've got to know when to switch on, and it is a difficult number to just sort of imagine. But I imagine we're there now. We're only 14 laps, boys, before we decide a winner.
Yeah. See, I can't even imagine the kind of pressure they're going through. Like, again, I had pressure on pacing just to make sure I don't wreck the pace car, but they're going to win the race. I can't even imagine what they're feeling right now of, hey, listen, this is my shot. I mean, obviously there's a prize on the line, but this is my shot to win this race. And there is a bit of prestige with it, and there is a bit of cash with it too.
And let's not forget, too, Scott, you touched on this. 200 laps, and we've now entered into the third hour of this race. What these drivers have been asked to do is go through a 200-lap marathon. We call it an endurance race for the cars, but how about for the drivers, both physically and mentally? And you're being asked in the final 10 laps after running 190 circuits, oh yeah, you got to go out there and you got to make these cat-like reflex moves to try and pick up the victory.
Cat-like reflex moves at what, 200 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is crazy. Look, this is definitely where I'm out of my element. I could not be able to do what these guys are doing. I'm good at endurance racing. That's definitely my forte, but not to the same sort of level that these guys are doing it. You know,
well, it's every corner you have to start looking so much ahead, and you have to start planning your moves so much farther than you would, and even like you were saying, a 11 Cup or World Endurance car. I mean, it's just a different, I guess, different animal altogether.
But that's the benefit of motor racing, right? It's not like soccer, it's not like football, it's not like any of that where every single time you take to the field, you're taking to the field in a consistent basis. If you all of a sudden lose your contract in one series and you up and move over, take a look at Roman Grosjean and Scott McLaughlin, both of those guys are definitely going through that this year. You're on a brand new field, the ball is a different shape, the ball runs at a different speed, and the skills required are completely and utterly different. Yet those guys are still showing that they've got the pace and they know exactly how to do it. And have a look at these guys out there tonight. I'm sure, without a doubt, we'd have some road races in the field. We'd have.
I mean, look at this. I mean, Forsyth and Wagner are really just kind of holding the banner for the Dark Horse guys, while Henry Bennett and Polo Hernandez, hey, they're the single race guys. They just came here for this Indy 500. So they're just trying to win this event. So, I mean, I think there's a little bit more. I mean, Forsyth, obviously, he wants to repeat, but Paulo Hernandez, the only thing he's got in his mind is winning. I don't know if he plans to race any more races next season.
Any more races that we know of, he'd definitely still be on the iRacing platform. That's, I mean, that's what I'm after.
Yes.
Come on, Matt. You don't just show up to an Indy 500 and that's all you do. No, you're going to hang around. You paid your subscription fees. You paid for the cars. You're going to get out there and have a fair bit of fun.
Have you asked Jamie McMurray about his Daytona 500 starts?
Well, Greg Forsyth, last season, with 2 laps to go, was running 4th. By the time they got back to the start-finish line, with a forward-wide move, he was the race leader. Right now, he is lined up in 3rd place, looking back to Matt Wagner. He got 2 cars ahead of him that continue to run side by side. At what point do you say, okay, enough is enough, there's a space open to me, I'm going to try and take it because it's for the race win?
Okay, so I take it, and I take it now. And the reason I take it now is actually because of that lap traffic in the way. You want Rick Ravon, and you want to use him like a wedge. You want to drive him in the middle of the pack that you're in. Unfortunately, the way that Rick Ravon is actually racing, which I think all of these guys are doing a phenomenal job, first and foremost. Don't take anything away from that. I think Rick Ravon needs to just recognize right now this is no longer his race. He needs to pull down low. I think any time from about now, we will under 10 to go and just get out of this battle pack. You're right. A caution comes. Yeah, sure, he's going to get that lap back, but he's going to get it back anyway. This is no longer his fight. I'd be getting out of this. I'd be letting the 3 leaders go to it. Otherwise, Rick Ravon is going to end up deciding this race.
All right, I'm going to fight you on that, actually.
Oh,
I, for one,
like
I enjoy Rick being here because as a leader and from almost kind of a leader standpoint, I can use Rick to my advantage.
Yeah.
I can put him in places where, it looks like Polo Hernandez may have just lost connection. No, he's back.
He's back.
All right, that's a heart attack. But I'll go ahead and I'll use this perspective here, where he's using Rick as a kind of a blocker, where, hey, Polo doesn't have enough fuel.
I told you, I didn't think he was going to have enough to make it to the conclusion.
All right, so
let's in front for a good portion of the last run, out in front for a good portion of this run, and he came to pit road about 4 to 5 laps sooner than I thought he should have.
So let's shift to this. Obviously, Forsyth wants to use Rick as kind of like a roadblocker. He wants to get him out of the way, but here's the thing that also works against him, because he can use Rick as a draft. And look at Forsyth. Forsyth's leaving that bottom open. If he gets a good enough draft off of him, he can fly by. But the reason I think Forsyth is hanging back behind Rick and that they haven't really made any attempt to pass him is I don't think any of these guys are good on fuel.
Well, Matt Wagner,
don't know.
He's been backing off quite a bit, so maybe the 99?
Well, that's what I was looking at early in the run, was if you actually have a look at the whole group, the only one that wanted to lead the bunch was actually Hernandez, and Hernandez is now in the lane. Now Rick Ravon, we were talking Rick Ravon might decide this motor race. He might be deciding this motor race right now. Just his mere presence might actually create enough fuel for a whole bunch of guys to go 3 wide down the backstretch.
And that's the thing where Rick...
No, thank you.
Rick really kind of stopped up that inside.
Oh, no!
Forsyth's around.
And will that bring out the caution? Indeed,
yes.
It will. Closing in on 5 laps to go. The yellow flag waves. We should get back green, but with how many laps as the defending winner of this race is all torn up in turn 4.
That's the result of, hey, you had a lap car in front of you. And I guess we should really go back to turn 3. I think that's where the majority of his issues started, where, listen, Ravone was in the middle. You had Bennett on bottom and Forsyth on top. With Rick being there in the middle, he's really kind of stopped up that high lane because you really can't hold 3 wide entering 3. So he had to back off, kind of give him a little bit of room. He tucked in behind Rick, got a really good run, but also Bennett had a little bit of a kind of trouble on the inside because he wanted to pull up and get draft from Rick. Those two kind of met in the middle, and it resulted in Forsyth, kind of getting the short end of the stick.
Question to you boys. Does this decide our fuel numbers, positive or negative? Do we see cars on pit road just to grab that splash because they were always going to be short, or do you think this now says that we've got multiple cars that are actually fine?
I mean,
Alright.
there's no green, white, checkered, so I mean, you have
Yeah.
to.
Well, in my opinion, I think if you were borderline able to make it the rest of the way on what you had in the tank, you've got these pace laps to be able to work with. I think if you're up inside the top 3, maybe 4, you're staying out. You're keeping that track position. But you remember that group back there with Brooks and Stafford, Moore, Peterson? I think you're definitely coming down pit road.
Aye.
Let's talk the difference in those two strategies at this part of the motor race, right? Now, normally in a stock car setting, you've got 4 cars to go. You've got a couple of laps here to go before the checkers, right? You want to grab those. If you're right at the back end of the lead lap, you're going to come down. You're going to come grab fresh tires because 1, there's no penalty to it. You're not going to be losing any positions. 2, the difference between the old tires and the new tires is so dramatic. But this is IndyCar. This is completely different. These cars handle completely different. So that changes the equation once again. Are the cars able to get home on the tires that they were currently on? Absolutely. There shouldn't be any difference here whatsoever. Do you think there's going to be guys still coming down pit lane? I think they lose too much.
Yeah.
If they come down pit lane and they lose 1 or 2 places, we are going to have 1 or 2 laps to go.
I'm gonna play
remember that.
devil's advocate here. I want fresh tires. I mean, here's the thing. They've been on these same tires for about 30 laps. I mean, here's the thing. I'm just trying something different because I'm looking at Bronson Stafford here. He was in P8. Yes, you've lost 2 positions effectively to get a little bit extra fuel to make sure you're 100% safe, and you've got fresh tires in the rest of the field.
The only thing that we saw with old tires versus fresh tires, though, earlier on, were on a longer run, drivers on the older tires really struggling with the car wanting to turn into the corner. If you're out there with everybody else that's struggling with the same identical problem and the same number of tires laps on your tires as their tires, it's still equal footing. I honestly don't see, with Bronson Stafford on pit road back there in 10th, I don't see with the limited number of laps we're going to have, which could be 2 or 3 laps, I don't see how you're going to pick up those 10 spots, regardless of how fresher your tires are.
No, 100%. Like, you might pick up, I would say in the realm of 4 to 5 is going to be where sort of your maximum. But that's it. That's it.
I'm going to tell you, Steph, this stat line at the end of the race, regardless of whatever Matt Wagner finishes, it will not tell the full story of this race.
No, not at all. It look like the Rocky Mountains or something there. We noticed this strategy here by Henry Bennett. When the caution came out, he continued to race it all the way back to the start-finish line, and then threw the clutch as soon as he hit the start-finish line. He has spent a good lap and a half ahead of the pace car, which just now picks him up, so he obviously was saving a ton of fuel right there.
I mean, he had obligations, right? He had to get out in front of these guys. And he wanted to make sure he ticked off the lap, that he's going to lead the field under pacing. He's, ticking all of his boxes, and he's also ticking his fuel boxes. He wanted to make sure as well that he was maximum distance away from Matt Wagner. He doesn't want to give Matt Wagner any information. Remember I was talking about the analogy of playing with your poker cards face up on the table? He's made sure that he's got his poker cards face down. They're underneath his arms. And he's got something underneath him to make sure that he's confident that there's nothing doing as well. He's playing him close to the chest, boys. 3 laps. We got 3 laps left at this stage. The next time by, is that lights out the safety car? It is. We got 3 laps.
It is indeed. This caution changed things for 2 drivers. For Craig Forsyth, he will not be a back-to-back Indy 500 champion. He has taken his car to the garage. More than likely will finish around 17th. And Rick Ravon, who was not involved in that incident, he was in the vicinity, but not the cause of that wreck. He was the free pass car, so we will have 11 drivers on the lead lap here for a 3-lap shootout to finish out what's been a crazy race here at Indianapolis in the Indy 500.
One more thing to note before we go back to green. Does Henry Bennett have damage on that right-hand side of the car?
I don't think he does.
No, me neither. I don't think he does, but it's still a question mark that we're going to find out in about 3 corners time.
Got a really good jump off the line.
But is that too big a jump? We've seen how 2nd, 3rd, 4th, how they can reel in the race leader if he has too big of a gap between himself and his competition at the speedways. Really all depends on how much fuel's in the tank for the 99 if he's willing to push it.
Boys, I'm excited. I'm always excited at the end of back end of motor races, though. This is where the boys become the men. This is where you win things. This is where you put all of that effort you've put into this race over the entire distance, and you suddenly say, "I want to win this race, and I am not giving this thing up."
Matt,
I don't know if anyone
halfway-
wants to lead here.
But halfway through the race, would we have said later on that Matt Wagner was leading this race? I don't know.
Definitely, he had to be the biggest wild card, but I don't know if I want to lead this race with 2 laps left to go because I think there's something wrong with Henry Bennett's car. But I mean, here's the thing: that still leaves the door open for Eric Schaus and AJ Hobson to make a last lap dash.
Oh! I tell you what, Bennett is struggling. Bennett is deep mired in the traffic. AJ Hobson come a mile up the track on the exit of 2 there, nearly collected him. That would have been two incidents in the last sort of 5 laps. He's in trouble, is Henry Bennett.
Schaus tries the top side there through 3 and 4. Can't quite get alongside just yet. He'll try and see what he can do on the front straightaway here. Coming to the white flag here at Indy.
Usually,
And look-
I'd say you have to make him pass you on the outside, but I think the outside has enough grip to complete the pass.
It's tight, boys. It's tight. Matt Wagner's going to send it down the inside off of 1 and 2. It is coming back. There is going to be 2 corners to run. Has Matt Wagner sealed the deal? He's leading. Not by a lot. Down to the apron on the inside. No draft available for the guys on the high side. And
Because
Bennett coming back.
3 wide into turn 3. Bennett goes to the point.
Oh, wreck in the back!
That's on. There's a
That's
ground. Is that
Peterson.
Henry Bennett going to say this thing? Wagner gets the run. Is Wagner going to win the Indy 500? He's there. He's thereabouts. It's decided by win it. Inches.
Wagner.
It is inches in it. Matt
Wagner by
Wagner.
a wing. Holy cow.
Well, that's going to be one amazing bar story later.
Oh my goodness, you're not kidding. Halfway through this race, folks, on a green flag pit stop, he blinked across the start finish line. It didn't score him on lap 52. And now he's going to be the winner of this race. Definitely scored him as the leader of the completion of lap 200. And think about last season, too. Wagner was up in the top 5, had a shot with 3 laps to go to win that race. Brought out the last caution of the day, limped it home to 12th. So if you took last year's race stats and compared them with this year's race stats, I think you'd probably have the Rocky Mountains, the Andes Mountains, I don't know, throw the Appalachian Mountains in there. You'd have quite a graph.
Look, the one thing that being that mired back in the traffic and driving through it towards the very end of the race definitely tells you. What that says to me is that you know that you've got a fast race car, you're confident of your abilities through the traffic, you're just confident of your abilities full stop, and so when you come to a restart like that, you've done all the hard yards. You've gotten yourself up to the pointy end of this thing, and then he managed the traffic, he managed the draft, he managed everything on the final lap perfectly, like he's been doing all day. None of these other guys have had to do that much work through the traffic all day long. He has.
How about Matt Wagner's season? Started off the year on fire, picked up the win in the season opener at Auto Club. Was in the conversation multiple weeks at multiple speedway races, actually finished up there inside the top 5 in a number of the road course races as well, but just couldn't seem to find his way back to victory lane. He's going to cap off the year with a trip to victory lane here in the Indy 500, a bookend season in season 3.
Man, he won that just barely by the nose cone.
18 1,000ths is what they're saying on the scoring pylon.
And this is all about 220, 225, mind you.
Boys,
I think that
What a
finish
race.
is worth another look.
can we go, like, can we just run that last lap again for the next hour? That was enjoyable.
That thing on loop. We thought Henry Bennett was out of this thing. He was able to get a run into turn 3 wide. I thought for a brief moment he actually had won this race.
I thought he did. I honestly, coming off of 3 and 4, he was ahead, but I thought he had the momentum. I didn't think the closing speed was going to be enough. We entered the pit road entry line to run to the flag, and I was like, oh, Bennett's got this. There's no way that Wagner is going to get his way back on. But he did. What a drive. And look, there was a wreck in the background. A whole bunch of guys won't actually take the line with the cleanest cars that they've had all day. Like, look at Rick Ravon, 31 seconds down off of the leader. I mean, we're a 40-second lap. That's just purely from crawling that car across the line. Bronson Stafford was involved, a whole host of lap traffic. There's so many cars out there in that field as well that have had a long day, that have had a day marred with damage, with issues, you know. And one of them's Matt Wagner.
Yeah. And think of it as too, if you look at some of these other guys, it took them until the closing stages of the race for it to go a little bit downhill. Polo Hernandez, I think he led the most laps here today, either he or Henry Bennett, because those two kept seeming to swap the race lead back and forth on these green flag runs, but couldn't make it on fuel. Caution comes out. He was on the tail end of the lead lap, but it had him mired back around the 9th, 10th position on that final restart, and he was only able to work his way up to 7th.
I mean, I'm just having a look at it. He had a clean car at least, so at least he made his way through all the traffic, and he wasn't caught up in that. You know, there is a nice story there. I mean, he led the most laps. You talked about it. He burned the most fuel of anyone in the race, if that's what he was doing. Boys, what a day! What a day! I'm annoyed for multiple reasons. First and foremost, I got my time conversions wrong, and that's led me to miss. First and foremost, I'm a racing fan. I would not be sitting in this commentary box if I was not a racing fan. I do this out of pure passion. And what I saw out in that racetrack for the short while that I was here just incited that passion. You know, you talk about Polo Hernandez, who led such a massive amount of laps, is going to burn more fuel than the rest of the competition. He's still there in the equation. We were talking about him in the equation the whole long. I'm going to talk about Bronson Stafford for a moment. I've seen that guy race stock cars. That guy can drive. Right? But Indy cars are just such a different equation to get your head around. And at the same time, you as a driver, you want to enter yourself in events like these because they are the Indy 500. These are prestigious. You don't just look at the Indy 500 and go, that's easy. It's same as Bathurst for me as an Australian. I just don't look at Bathurst and go, I'm going to jump in the car. I'm just going to run around that thing. It'll be easy as pie. You know it's not. Because you know it's not from real life. You know that professionals make mistakes, right? And when professionals make mistakes and struggle in conditions, and we've seen professionals struggle at the Indianapolis 500. There is not an Indy 500 in years that has gone green. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is professional racing. It takes extreme amounts of skill. When you make a mistake at 200 plus miles an hour, it is disastrous. And we've seen guys race cleanly, you know, for 203 laps. What a day. You can't ask for more than that.
And to your point, too, a lot of the wrecks that we've had here today have taken places in different vicinities of the track, and a lot of them have just come down to maybe just slight mistakes. It hasn't been that a driver has completely blown a corner or they've completely pinched another driver down. Nothing like that. It's just been small, minor mistakes. And you said, with the fact that they carry over 220 miles per hour, that tiny little mistake can have very catastrophic results. Is a lot of the guys that we looked at as possibilities to win this race. By the time we got halfway through this event, they were back in the garage area. We saw Craig Forsyth. We thought, could he be able to go back to back? He got involved in a late race incident, and I find this really ironic because I just remembered back. I've mentioned this all day long. Matt Wagner was involved in a wreck that eventually led to Craig Forsyth winning the Indy 500 last season under the caution flag. This year, it is Craig Forsyth involved in a late race wreck that brings us to a late race restart, and who wins the race? Matt Wagner. So it all seems to come full circle.
So look, I'm tipping for 2022. Both of those guys will be the recipients of the wreck. That
so who
decides the race.
Who wins for that one?
Somebody else wins. Yeah,
so Nick
somebody else.
Nick DeGroot, last year's runner-up, and Henry Bennett, this year's runner-up, they tie for the win.
That's it, boys. Look, I've just gone back over that last little lap incident. Go and have a look at it from Polo Hernandez's shoes. He has had a 200 mile an hour flight and fright to remember. That if that's your last lap of the Indy 500, you're going to be remembering that thing for years, whether or not you run it.
Yeah, I believe that the two drivers that actually got together up into the outside wall were Eric Peterson and Bronson Stafford. Both of them managed to get their cars back to the start-finish line. Stafford finishing 9th and Peterson finishing in the 11th position. And again, as well, we're focusing here on Matt Wagner with this victory. We will be talking with him momentarily in victory lane, but got to give congratulations as well to Robert Maleska III on winning the championship here this season. 10 victories, a total of 14 top 5s and 15 top 10s in the 15 starts that he made this season. And also, congratulations to Twisted Trojan Motorsports with Maleska III, Dylan Moskowitz, and Jeff Heisong. They're going to win the team championship here for Season 3.
Again, you talk about endurance races. Championships are the pinnacle of endurance races because they are. They're not just an Indy 500. You can't win a team's championship just by winning one race. That'll never happen. There's a season long. They are everything in terms of the pinnacle of motorsport because you have to compete against multiple drivers from other teams. So that automatically just rules luck out of the equation. That takes consistency. That takes determination. It takes grit. It takes earning respect to your competition. Respect in motorsports is just such an important aspect. I constantly talk about it during our other broadcasts. You don't race around the guys that you're racing around and have your actions impact the way that they handle you as another driver, the way that they talk to you, the way that they interact with you out on the racetrack, the way that they interact with your teammates out on the racetrack. So to be able to come out and win a team's championship, what that means is you've garnered that respect, you've pushed for the holes when you know that they're there, you've talked to the guys who you've had contact with and you've come to blows with, and you've managed those relationships, but also you've been consistent and on track, you've done your practice, you've done your hard work, you've raced to the absolute limit of the cars on multiple occasions, and you've come always, standing at the top. And you talk about singular championships. If anything, I think teams championships are harder because you've got to do all the things you've got to do to win a driver's championship across one car, and you take that and you do it across two.
Let's say we could talk with some of the drivers that took part in today's 200 lapper. Last time we were at a 2.5 mile speedway was Pocono, and this guy went to victory lane. He's going to finish 3rd here today in his first Indy 500 here in Season 3. Let's talk with Eric Schaus. Hey Eric, it's Scott, Matt, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
Man, we're doing good, but boy, we had ourselves one heck of a finish to be able to watch, but you were a part of it there on that final lap. About 5-6 drivers in the conversation. We talked about how you were really good in the closing stages in that battle at Pocono. Track of similar length here today, obviously not the same configuration, but what was the strategy there when that late caution came out and you knew you guys were going to have a very small shootout to be able to finish out this Indy 500?
Yeah, I was pretty glad to see that caution come out. I was right on the edge of fuel. I could have made it, but I might have had to run map 5 all the way to the end, which, is no good if I'm trying to battle it out in the front there. So having that come out was nice. It allowed me to go down to map 1 and really keep my foot in the throttle for most of it. Unfortunately, just going into 3 on that last lap when we went 3 wide, me being on the outside, it was hard to just hold my momentum up. I didn't take the line quite the way I intended to, and at that point, it was really just Matt and Henry up front, and I was just trying to hang on for 3rd.
So, Eric, I gotta ask, on that last lap when you saw Henry Bennett in turn 3 shove it down to the bottom, do you think he was going to take everyone up top with him?
No, I wasn't. I know, Matt and Henry are both excellent drivers. I wasn't too concerned about that. What actually caught me off guard was I thought Matt was going to defend the low line. I thought Henry was going to come in between us. So that's what I was looking for. But then all of a sudden I saw Matt's car underneath me, and that kind of threw me off my line, just because I wasn't anticipating that. But it was a great move by Henry, and well done by Matt to bring it back.
Man, I'm just watching it back. The run to the line between you and Hobson was phenomenal. Hobson starts to stick it up the inside of you coming through 3 and 4. Are you worried for a moment that you're about to lose the podium at the Indy 500, or you think that you got that guy covered coming through to the checkers?
Honestly, I don't think I was too concerned there. I know if you hold the outside line through 4, you usually have the momentum coming out, and unless he's got a nice draft and can really slingshot past you, it's pretty tough. So I felt okay.
So, Eric, we documented that you started this race from the 25th position, didn't lay down a lap time this past Wednesday and qualify, and so subsequently started towards the rear of the field. We talk about how this type of a race and its longevity is an endurance race. Describe for the folks at home just how difficult it is to pace yourself in a race like this, having to pass cars from back to front to make sure that by time you get around to that final lap, you're going to be up there in the conversation for that checker.
Yeah, well, I figured, I don't qualify well here, so I figured whether I qualify 15th or I just start in the back at 25th, with such a long race, it's, there's no difference to me. If anything, it's better than being in the middle of the mix as people are trying to figure out the track, causes cautions, all kinds of things that can be dangerous. So yeah, starting in the back, it was really just about pacing myself, running map 5 the whole time, letting people by if they wanted it, don't tear up the tires, and then pitting with the leaders was part of my strategy. Even if I was 4 or 5 seconds behind them, if I could have a good pit, maybe I can catch their toe on the way out and jump a couple people in the pits that way. And it seemed to work out pretty well.
Well, Eric, congratulations on a third-place run here today. Your first Indy 500 here under the Dark Horse IndyCar Series banner. Good to be able to see you close out the season on a high note. You had that victory back at Pocono. You've had a very good season overall. Going to be finishing, I believe, 4th in the overall standings here. Congratulations. We're going to let you do some thank you sponsors and shout-outs.
All right, thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks to all the guys over at Dark Horse putting on this league, Eric Peterson and Charles T and everybody else, all the other admins. I appreciate the league a lot. Thanks to you guys at FRN for putting on this show. Thanks to HyperX for sponsoring the league, and thanks to my wife who's usually watching, and appreciate it.
That's Eric Schaus. Closes out the season with a third-place run here today in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500 presented by HyperX. Congratulations, Eric. We look forward to seeing you carry this momentum into the 4th season.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Doesn't look like we have our second-place finisher, Henry Bennett, available, so let's go right down to victory lane and talk with two-time winner on the season and your Indianapolis 500 winner. That is Matt Wagner. Hey, Matt, it's Scott, Matt, and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
Loud and clear.
All right, so we're going to get to how you feel with your race victory here tonight in just a moment, but I want to go back to a moment that kind of really changed the landscape of the race and set us up for the storybook ending at the finish. You ended up having a green flag pit stop. You come down pit road. You blink out across the start-finish line. It has you scored 1 lap down. How difficult is it at a track and a race with such prestige as this to keep yourself mentally focused, to stay in the game and say, hey, there's still a long ways to go. I still got a shot at this thing?
My whole plan was to just keep focused, keep doing what I'm doing, keep saving fuel, and try to keep I know Teed was right behind me. He was looking for the lucky dog as well. And I wanted to keep a car between me and him. And at that moment, a caution came out. Oh, what a sign of relief that was, just to get back on the lead lap. But patience paid off.
So I've got to ask in full honesty, did you actually think you would catch him by the end of the straightaway, or were you just kind of like, well, we got to make it look convincing?
Oh, God. Man, I really, I'm just in shock that I won. It's
What story?
I'm still in shock. To beat Bennett out of all people that I race with day in and every week, actually. Not day in, day out, but every week on Tuesday nights. But that made it so much sweeter.
As in, am I picking up? I feel like I'm getting a lot of respect, and I'm not picking up bad vibes between you and Bennett. But it was amazing, right? I mean, the things and the questions that I actually want to ask you at this point is, you've been in traffic all day long. That is one of the benefits of having something, like a failure, come into the things, is you know that you've got to race through traffic. So that tells you a few things. That tells you, 1, I'm good on fuel. I know how to manage the fuel margin. 2, I know how I can manage the track. I know I can complete the passes. I know I can get ahead of these guys. 3, I've got the strategy. I've got the brains. I've got the car management. I've got the tire management. I've got everything to win these things. Do you think you had more confidence on the last lap? or do you think you had less confidence because of everything that you've been through today?
I knew when I was looking in my rearview mirror, and I was thinking about I should have went really low, and that's no, he's going to try and push the middle. Then he'll probably get the run off the corner. And I'm like, oh god, he pushed it 3 wide. So I was prepared for it. As hopefully I would catch his draft on the end, which I did, and I end up trying to. I'm not sure how good these cars are side drafting, but by God, thank you for the side draft.
Now, Matt, this is the second straight season in Indy 500 that we've had a late race yellow kind of determine out the finish. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. You guys were very close on fuel before that caution flag came out. Would you have been able to make it back to the checkered flag had we not had those pacing laps, or were you going to have to come to pit road before the conclusion?
Oh, I would have had a gallon and a half left. If I would have ran it, I'd start running fuel rich mode about 9 laps to go, and I was good to the end.
All right, well, Matt, we talked about the fact you started out the season really well with that trip to victory lane at Auto Club. You cap it off with a victory here at Indianapolis. So what's the confidence level now for you heading into Season 4 of Dark Horse IndyCar Series?
I am looking forward to it. I'm sorry to say, but I'll be putting rest to Speedy Snails Racing, but it was a good run. I had some couple of people. I know I had a couple of people drop out, but I will be joining a new team, and you guys will find out here shortly. I'll post it up in the chat. You'll find out at the beginning of the season.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Speedy Snails Racing now will be escargot at a French restaurant near you. Matt, congratulations on the victory.
Hell yeah! I'm pretty hungry. Dude. I gotta pee, guys. But
hang on, Matt.
You have time to do some thank you sponsors and shout outs before
I'm gonna shout out to my nearest bathroom. I will be locating here in the next couple minutes. But anyway, hey,
I got a shout out to a glass of milk.
Yeah, agreed. But you guys did a fantastic job all season long. Just kept everything all nice, and oh god, you guys are very entertaining behind the mic. God, I don't know who to thank. I think to thank Charles Teed for bringing me in this league. It was so much fun. I had a great time this whole season, but probably one race I really struggled the most was Silverstone, and that was quite disappointing. But other than that, I had fun at every track, and God, I'm excited. Let's kick off next season next week, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen.
Well, Matt Wagner, what a way to cap off his season here. Second trip to victory lane, and it's a big one. The Indianapolis 500 here today in the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. Congratulations, Matt. We'll let you go, but congratulations on the victory. We look forward to seeing you carry this momentum into Season 4.
Hell yeah, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Congrats, buddy.
All right, so who wants to lay down? Who wants to lay down bets? The fastest lap time of the day versus whether or not he's going to break that record getting to the bathroom.
It was actually considerably slower than last year, surprisingly.
That's true. I think the fastest lap that was laid down today was by Rick Rivon at a 40.509, and I think you said, Matt, that it was like a 33-second lap time last season.
40.333.
Yeah.
So can I just say one thing about that end of the race interview? Did he say we were entertaining? What broadcast is he listening to?
I mean, as long as we're awake, we're entertaining.
Speak for yourself.
Oh, okay, all right, calm down. I'm wholeheartedly sticking to Matt told me the wrong time. I'm sticking to that because if he told me the right time, I would have said no from the get-go. At least would have been honest with you, Matt. I'm not gonna lie.
Sorry, you can't set an alarm clock.
Look, the difference between getting up at 2 a.m. and getting up at 5 a.m. is a long way, my friend. And I had a long day.
That's why I asked you, hey, are you okay to wake up at this time?
Guys, FRN goes to group therapy after this race. That is for sure.
The good news is that Matt Wagner woke up in time to be able to race in today's event because he was able to win the race and take the checkered flag. So congratulations to him. 18 one-thousandths of a second. I do believe that actually is the closest finish this entire year as well for Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. So what a great way to have a photo finish to cap off the season. And again, congratulations to Robert Maleska, III. Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk to him here tonight in winning the championship, but nonetheless, champion here in Season 3 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. He, along with Nick DeGroot, they'll be trying to battle it out in Season 4 to see who'll be the first two-time champion, and I guarantee you, Wagner, Schaus, there's some other drivers there, Covey Moore. I think you're going to see some pretty good battling to see who's going to be able to hoist that championship trophy in next year's schedule.
Yeah, I mean, you just have a look at the names that were out there today and the names that fell by the wayside. Like, it's... How often do you see a race of this sort of quality with that many drivers still on the lead lap and still battling for position at the end of 200 laps? It's an Indy 500. It's a long distance. You know what's a long distance? Championships, baby. Who's keen for next season? I'm with Matt Wagner. Can we start straight away? First race of the new season kicks off in about now.
Yeah, let's rack them up.
Actually,
Let's rack them up and do it again.
But I believe it was June 16th. There should be a Wednesday. It would be at Michigan. I was going to say Martinsville. That'd be terrifying.
Martinsville. Man, I'm down for that.
It's going to be at Michigan International Speedway. And we saw how much fun it was, I believe, previous week. Was it last week?
It was.
Oh, well.
Yep.
But we saw how much fun it was with that setup, and I think they're bringing the same car back. So that's definitely going to be a bit interesting to see how we kick off the season with that.
Well, they kicked off the season with a 2-mile track this year at Auto Club. Matt Wagner won there, so we'll see if he can get his season off to a good start in Season 4 at Michigan. But, man, a long one here tonight for the drivers, but it was certainly worth sticking around if you joined us here today because the finish was exemplary. Matt Wagner with the victory, 18 one-thousandths of a second over Henry Bennett. Once again, congratulations to Robert Maleska III on the championship. Congratulations to Twisted Trojan Motorsports on their team championship. And now it's a clean slate in about 2 months' time to be able to find out how the storybook is going to be written for Season 4 of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. Matt, Scott, appreciate you joining me in the booth here today. Matt, thank you for not wrecking the pace car. Appreciate that as well. It would have been entertaining.
I almost did out of 1. Or sorry, out of 4.
You shouldn't have admitted that. You looked good. But thank you guys for joining me in the booth. It's been a blast.
Oh man, for all the time that I was here, I actually enjoy the Indy 500 more than you'd think. A lot of guys will show up and go, it's just a big draft battle. It's this. It's chess. It is the highest speed, highest intensity game of chess that you can get. I mean, fuel strategy, tire strategy, when do you pit, when does your window open, playing with all those numbers. I'm not good enough to do it. These guys clearly are.
We're going to be bringing you coverage tomorrow night of the Clutch Drop Cup Series at Dover International Speedway, so be sure to tune in to that as we will be at the Monster Mile green flag to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But once again, thank you to everybody that tuned into our coverage here today of the Indy 500. It's been a good one, and Matt Wagner is your winner. He and his team get to do the hat dance and kiss those fabled yard of bricks on the front straightaway. For Matthew Rodriguez, Scott Rankin, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for joining us here today as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.